Cinphomaniac is full of spoilers. If the movie's there in the title, we're probably gonna say everything that happens in it. So don't fucking listen if you don't wanna know.
Throughout my life, the Ten Rings gave our family power. If you want them to be yours one day, you have to show me you are strong enough to carry them.
You are a product of all who came before you. The legacy of your family. You are your mother. And whether you like it or not, you are also your father.
I told my men they wouldn't be able to kill you if they tried. Glad I was right.
To me, the great hope is just people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making them, and suddenly one day some little fat girl in Ohio is going to be the new Mozart, and make a beautiful film with her little father's camera. To me, the great hope is girl in Ohio is going to be the new Mozart. To me, the great hope is people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making them. To me, the great hope is Ohio is going to be the new Mozart. To me, the great hope is people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making. To me, the great hope is one day some little fat girl in Ohio is going to just be Mozart. Normally wouldn't make movies in Ohio is making the new Mozart. Just people who normally wouldn't make Mozart and be making. To me, the great hope girl in Ohio is going to make a Mozart beautiful film with her little father's camera recorder, and for once the so-called professionalism about moving Mozart destroyed forever, and it'll really become an art form. That's my opinion.
They had a lot of Disney songs playing. They played a lot of Disney songs.
Oh, you're kidding.
That was fun. Yeah, they did. The bride is a big fan. So there was a lot more Disney songs at this wedding than any other wedding I'd been to. And I was like, I appreciate this.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, I don't know. This is, I mean, not to make a cheap ploy and turn your story into a bullshit segue, but like, I can't help but when I think of this and think of like the wedding and all that stuff, think of like some of my excitement for the Eternals, because there seems to be a lot of like ancient cultural celebration scenes in that movie.
Yes.
Which is interesting. And
so
honestly, the
excited
architecture of like, because I think my assumption is there's somewhere in Mesopotamia when this story starts. That would make historical, I'm putting in quotes because they don't really have to stick to that, historical sense. So, I mean, yeah, that kind of puts you right in the Persian center of that, like the origins of that culture writ large. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Well, if they were like really, like, honestly, if it was going to be my choice, they would be at Göbekli Tepe, because that's the oldest structure that we found currently. Because
wait, where is that again?
Göbekli Tepe is technically, I think, in Turkey.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But it's like the oldest structures we've ever found. And you keep finding more and more and more of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, the idea is not to excavate at all. Everyone thinks archaeology is like you take everything, but you don't. You take as much as you need to learn about the culture, and then you leave it be, because you're going to spend so much money uncovering stuff and maybe not learning much more. But
well, speaking of which,
Tepe, but maybe it's like Mesopotamia, fountain of civilization.
Judging based off the trailers, like they like there's this city that they seem to help people build, and it just the architecture to me, again, I'm not an archaeological expert, but it looked very sort of like, Middle Eastern, but like ancient Indian as well, a little bit. So like Persian would make sense there, and like kind of just general Mesopotamia. But I don't know. It's a good point. I'm definitely like the so-called, like I said, historical connections are definitely an interesting aspect of the film that I'm looking forward to seeing. But we'll have plenty of time to kind of get into. I have some thoughts about things related to Eternals that we haven't even begun to set up yet.
Okay.
Yeah. No, because obviously the main topic for this week is going to be Shang-Chi, and kind of like
Shang-Chi!
Yeah. But I thought it'd be a good opportunity, and like we'll kind of make this a tradition on here. I mean, I kind of can't help but do it any other way, because like when I see one of these new movies, it's like it kind of like makes me go back to my like Pepe Silva board and like be like, oh, okay, actually like this I think is going to reappear here, and this is going to reappear here, and then they're actually setting this up. Like you know what I mean? Like, so I kind of feel like I owe it to everyone, at least most of all myself, to go through the whole thing again, like we did last time.
Yeah.
And, like really kind of update it, because there's a lot of stuff. But actually, even before we get to anything Marvel, there's a couple like little things non-Marvel related I just wanted to like give some shout out to, because it's an interesting kind of weekend movie. Like I said, I didn't really do anything this weekend, so I had some time to like watch some stuff. And on Criterion channel, they kind of did a really exciting new playlist, which is New York stories. Now, as you remembered when we talked about Gloria, and by the way, I'm going to be making sure we get that episode released within the next week. I've already started editing it, so it's going to be out. Yeah, because that's one from the archive. When we talked about that, not only did we like go into Cassavetes and like Jenna Rollins' careers, but I kind of like started off on this whole thing about like there's a difference between like real New York movies and fucking pretenders, or like Hollywood bullshit that claims to be in New York but has nothing to do with it, right? And I said it's not like it's a rare thing. There's actually, if you go through film history, there's a rich tradition of these movies. So Criterion clearly thought the same thing, and this list includes 61 movies, so it's a thick list. Yeah. But some of the key highlights, some of which I rewatched this in the past few days, and others which we've talked about before, so I'm just going to give them some shout outs. So they have Do the Right Thing on there. You recall we did that we talked a little bit about the summer list, and I mentioned it as well when in the New York movie context. Yeah, it's kind of like that. I don't want to rehash what we said there, and I'm sure anyone familiar with the movie kind of can gather where it goes with that. There's also, I also rewatched, because I watched it not even that long ago previously, but I just saw it on the list, and it was like just the perfect excuse to give it another go, which was Martin Scorsese's After Hours. Have you ever seen this film, After Hours, from the mid 80s?
I have not seen it, no, but I know about it, but I've never watched it.
Yeah, I think you'd really like it. I think you would really dig it. Yeah, like it's a weird movie, but I think
the vibes that I thought of it was like maybe it was like a version of Coffee and Cigarettes.
There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that. I think it kind of, the setup makes you think it's a bit more like that than it ultimately is.
Oh.
It's kind of like, I mean, this movie's been talked about a lot over the years because it's on the one hand like a very unique movie, and on the other hand, it's kind of like the prototype, or like just like kind of center of like a whole subgenre of movies that people don't really talk about very often, which is like late night adventure films. And this is like one of my favorite subgenres, if we can call it that. Like, and After Hours really is kind of like, I don't think it's necessarily the best one, but it's kind of the one that like could have probably took everything that happened before that, really kind of put it front and center, and then kind of set up everything afterwards. And like the whole key with the late night adventure, it typically, just by definition, it's a movie that happens in one night, meaning like that's it. You just get this one night, and that's the whole movie. So it's like it has a very particular kind of rhythm to it as a result of that. Like where you kind of start off, it's formula. Like but like what's interesting with After Hours that I actually really like, I think the first time you see it, it almost throws you off. You're like, what time is it? But you realize that's kind of the point, because it's like this guy doesn't even go out till 11:30. Next thing you know, it's like 3:30 or 4:30, and then you're like, the sun doesn't come up till the last scene. So it's like, damn, that 5 o'clock hour was packed with shit. But I think the whole point is you just kind of lose track of time. Yeah. But yeah, I don't want to spoil the movie at all, because I think you would really like it. But it's got a very interesting performance in the lead role by Griffith Dunn, who's not an actor I really know from anything else. Maybe some odds and ends here that like I just not remembering. But like what I think is interesting. Griffith Dunn. Yes, I believe, unless maybe I'm getting that wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Griffith. Griffith Dunn. He's an unusual kind of actor. He looks a lot like young Scorsese, which I think is why he's in this movie. Because it's like young Scorsese, probably like, oh, this kind of reminds me of nights I used to have out where I thought I was like gonna hook up with a girl and then everything went wrong in my life because I actually don't have my shit togetger at all, which is basically the movie. And it's like, it's one of those movies too that like what I really like about it is that the character, especially on the second watch, because the first time you're like not sure where it's going, and you're like also like I don't want to be too judgy because there might be things I don't know. But the second time you know what you're going to find out when you're not, so you're just watching this guy and you're like, this guy's a huge asshole. He sucks. He's like one of the most like annoyingly selfish, stupid people. Like a lot of the stuff that happens to him that goes wrong is completely his own fault. Okay. And like, if you're doing very stupid things that you would normally get very frustrated at a main character doing, but it's like part of why it works is because it's like, A, I think that's kind of the point. And B, it's like things are so chaotic and crazy and happening so fast that it's like, it actually feels very realistic. Because anytime, think about it, like from your own experience, anytime you make stupid decisions, you're usually not sitting there and being like, I'm going to make the stupid choice. You're usually just not thinking at all. And you're being impulsive. And then it's only like 10 minutes later that you realize that you are such an idiot. And if you're kind of a dick and you don't even have that moment 10 minutes later, you have that moment like 5 years later. And really what happens
or on
10
your
minutes,
deathbed.
Yeah. Really what happens 10 minutes later is you go, and this actually happens in the movie a few times. You go, actually, I'm doubling down. Everything is everyone else's fault. And I didn't do anything wrong.
Yep.
So do you have that scene several times with what's the character's name? The character's got a really stupid name. Yeah, no, it's Paul Hackett. And yeah, it is Griffin Dunn, not Griffith. So Paul Hackett.
Griffin Dunn has not stopped working. He has
no, he still acts. No,
wow,
I didn't.
Wow.
What has he been in recently?
He was in that show Search Party, the L Word.
I haven't watched
upcoming new L Word, Goliath, which was that show with Billy Bob Thornton.
Yes,
you remember that
show?
Yeah. Succession.
No, I know he's a guy who's been in stuff. A lot of stuff. He was in Ocean's 8. He was in Imposters, the TV show. This guy is I say kid. He's like he's a hardworking character actor. But it's weird seeing him in a starring role.
That's the dream. That's the dream, is what I'm saying. I want to be Griffin Dunn. I want to work forever, but
I want to get you a T-shirt that says "I want to be Griffin Dunn," and that's
I want to be Griffin Dunn.
No, you know who is also in the film is like kind of plays the girl that gets him into all this. I mean, when I say gets him in all this trouble, I mean, she didn't do anything wrong, but it's like he thinks he's going to like hook up with her. So that's what gets him in all the trouble is Rosanna Arquette, who's fantastic in the film.
Yes.
Yeah, she's so good.
I don't have a bad word to say about the Arquettes, any of them. I like them all.
Any of them. When you expand it to any of them, that's a bold statement.
Any of them. And I'll tell you why. This is a true Hollywood story about David Arquette and what an amazing person he is. Okay. Inside Hollywood story, you guys, has actually happened. I was bartending at a bar that he was friends with our owner. Mm-hmm. So he knew the guy that was running it. And I can't remember exactly what happened, if a barback got injured. I think he had to step away for quite a while. And we were slammed like a madhouse of people. We ran out of glasses, and I'm trying to find glasses, and I see somebody next to me washing dishes, and I'm like, thank goodness I don't have time to like look or talk, and I'm still getting more drinks, and I turn and I'm looking, I'm like, who's washing these dishes? It's David Arquette.
Oh my God.
David Arquette saw that his buddy's bar, he was like, oh, I'm friends with your owner, I'm just going to help you guys out. He just jumped behind the bar and started washing dirty dishes for us. Said nothing. I tried to give him a tip out as a joke. I knew he wasn't going to take it. I was like, here's your cut. He was like, absolutely not. He was the nicest man. I've met him a few times after that. He came into the bar that I used to work at. But just the fact that he was awesome. Like, oh, something needs to be done. My buddy's employees really need help. I'm just gonna come in and do it, not say anything. And it's like the worst of the jobs, you know. He's just like, I'm just gonna wash dishes for you guys for half an hour, you know. Not like 5 minutes. Like he was back there for a while. I was very grateful to him and still will remember that forever because it was so sweet.
Oh, wow. What a great, that is a great story. I love that.
It really is.
He always strikes me as like
I'm going to be specific too, because the place closed, but this was at the Dark Room on Melrose.
Yes. Oh, yes. I know it.
It just closed in 2020, which was a bummer because it was a cool place. I liked working
I didn't know you used to work there.
Yeah, that was one of my first gigs. That was probably my second bartending job in LA. So probably like, I don't know. 9 years ago, maybe.
Wow. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. And I was there for a couple of years, but, yeah, I'll never forget that day. It was so cool. And I told my mom about it. She was like, really? She was like, he seems like, and I was like, nope, he's like the nicest person. If people talk trash, it's ridiculously wrong.
Well, so, he's had some incidents, but like, it's not, I can totally see your story. And it's like, I didn't have a negative opinion at all. I just thought it was hilarious that you just go, I have nothing but great things to say about all the Arquettes.
All of them. Well, the thing
I was like, oh, okay, you're putting yourself out there with that one. I was a fan because I don't know if I can make blanket statements like that on anybody. But I like it. I respect it.
I was a fan of the female Arquettes' acting styles.
Of course.
Both of the female Arquettes I had already been a fan of. I don't think I had been super familiar with David's career, but as a person, just the fact that he used to hang out there and like would jump in and help. I'm like, so I like you no matter what. It's fine. Like I haven't seen his entire catalog, not even as much as I've seen of the Arquette sisters. But yeah, I mean they were like the 80s girls too. You know what I mean? Like,
well, this movie's 85, so this was like right in the middle of
in the smack of it, in the smack middle of the 80s, in the height of it. I think that the Arquettes specifically kind of helped to define that era.
One more thing I gotta say about After Hours before we move off of it is just After Hours has a very, very unique feature that the first time I saw it, I was like, no way. I did not expect that, which is two specific actors who appear together in this movie. I'm assuming it's the first time either of them appeared on screen together, but they very famously played parents in one of my favorite movies of all time, right? So who am I talking about? I'm talking about John Hurd and Catherine O'Hara, who of course are the Kevin McAllister's parents in Home Alone. Both are in After Hours. And like, at first they're like not in the same scenes together, but they actually do, even though it's not like a big thing, you actually do see them on screen together talking to each other at one point. So it's like, holy shit. They knew each other way back then. But, I guess Home Alone's only 5 years after this movie, but it's kind of funny because it's like they go from playing, young people in their 20s, presumably, to playing mom and dad, of like 7 kids. Oh man. When we get to the holiday season, we're definitely doing a full blown Home Alone episode where I'm going to go in real hard on the mysteries of Home Alone, which there's actually quite a few.
What? Really?
Yes.
I thought the main mystery is what is Kevin McAllister?
You haven't gone down the Home Alone rabbit hole?
What does he do?
I'm not spoiling it now.
Okay, don't spoil it now. We'll save it.
Don't spoil it now. Just if you start doing some weird Googling, you will find some strange Reddit threads and blog posts that ask very weird questions about Home Alone you never thought you were going to ask. Well, I did. That's the point. It's like I was like, oh, someone else noticed this. But yeah, it's pretty funny. Home Alone theories are great. It's a whole great subject. Speaking of theories, I just wanted to. Well, actually, there's a little bit of a segue here that I could set up because one other movie that I watched in this New York collection is Abel Ferrara's The King of New York, or King of New York. It's not called The King. It's just King of New York. With Christopher Walken. Do you know this movie?
I don't know that I do.
Okay. This is another good movie that I would recommend. It's like, but like when I say recommend, like you got to kind of come into it like knowing what you're getting into, I would say, which is like a very like gritty, violent crime movie in 1990 New York, where Christopher Walken plays a drug dealer, a gangster who
I just looked it up. Larry Fishburne's in it. I'm in.
Well, that's what I was about to mention. I was trying to set that up. No, Larry Fishburne. It's all good. It's all good. Larry Fishburne's in it, and he's fucking great. Yes. I actually watched another of his films, not a New York one. In fact, the opposite, an LA movie, Deep Cover, also this past weekend. I got the Blu-ray from Criterion and hadn't watched it yet, and I finally got around to it. Great film, great guy, kind of like neo-noir, and Jeff Goldblum's in it. Jeff Goldblum is absolutely insane in this movie, like in a different kind of than the normal Goldblum way, like because he plays like that guy who's like kind of like if Sean Penn in Carlito's Way was like a more like interesting character, if you ask me.
Oh,
not so ridiculous.
The accountant with glasses and the hair, like that.
Yeah,
character.
so Jeff Goldblum plays a lawyer who becomes like a drug dealer, and like I don't know if I want to spoil the movie, but he takes it a lot further.
What's it called again?
Deep Cover, directed by Bill Duke, who's an actor who has directed a few movies, and
I might just have a Larry Fishburne weekend. Although this weekend
you should now.
I'm very excited. We're filming episode 1 of our cocktail show. Show will air at Bar Battle LA, and we shoot episode 1 this Saturday. I'm very excited.
I'm very excited. I can't wait to see it. Yeah.
If you like cocktails and secret ingredients and bartenders, it'll be fun for you.
Excellent. Wait, where can people watch this when it comes?
We're gonna put it on YouTube.
Okay, nice. Well, all right, we'll give it the full plug when it drops. What's that?
Yeah, there'll be a link on the Instagram for Bar Battle LA too.
Gotcha. Yeah. We'll definitely check that out, everybody. But when we'll continue to.
So when I have a full weekend, it's going to be a Larry Fishburne weekend because I need to now watch Deep Cover.
Yes, you would like both these films. Yes.
Yeah, I think I actually would really enjoy both of these.
Yeah, if you like,
but I haven't seen.
If you like young Larry Fishburne in a crime movie, and like he's a supporting character in King New York, but in Deep Cover he's the lead. It's like all him.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
I just did a little screenshot of both, so I remember to watch them both.
No, I can't recommend them enough, and that goes for everybody. But what's interesting is, obviously, this just makes me think of the fact that tomorrow, we're getting that Matrix Resurrections trailer. And I just had, we did a little conversation about the Matrix Resurrections and the CinemaCon footage a few weeks ago. I didn't actually release that, so nobody's heard it, which is unfortunate. I don't think anybody will now because it's a little bit outdated when we're going to get the trailer tomorrow. But the only thing I'm really reticent about is that I did this. I don't even know if it was good exactly, but it'll get better because I'm going to keep doing it. But I did a Dr. Cornel West impression, and I want it to be good. I want everyone to hear that because I think it's going to be very funny. But you know what? They'll get plenty of chances because I'm only all saying all this to be like, at some point, probably in the fall, in the lead up to this movie, we'll definitely like do an extensive like series of episodes covering the entire Matrix franchise. We'll do all 3 movies, the Animatrix, all that shit. Because that's one that like goes kind of deep into my DNA when we talked about Free Guy, which is an episode we've released. And so it's definitely take a listen to that. Yeah. We talked about kind of like the film having some unusual or unexpected similarities to the Matrix. And I think it's interesting to see this marketing that's been done the last week on the Matrix Resurrection so far, because they are really emphasizing the red pill, blue pill thing. And that's interesting given like the current context to which we find, terms like red pilling being so prominent in internet culture. And I know the Wachowskis have opinions about that, by the way. So, right. This is going to be very interesting to see how the film goes. And we know that obviously Keanu and Carrie-Anne Moss are back, but from what I understand, the Larry Fishburne is not in this movie, which I honestly can't believe I'm the one saying this. I'm like trying to remember the end of Matrix Revolutions and be like, did Morpheus die? I'm pretty sure he didn't. I mean, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe he did. I don't remember. But either way, it seems like Morpheus, at least as played by Larry Fishburne, is not in the movie. Or if he is, they're keeping it a secret. So I don't know.
I want to think they're keeping it a secret.
Yeah.
I want to believe that.
God love Larry Fishburne. He's a fucking legend. But if you've seen him lately, he's a big guy now. He might look weird as Morpheus. I'm not gonna lie.
We'll see.
Not that it matters. They could always fucking CG weight loss him. They're not above doing that, man. Let me tell you. They do.
Yeah, I have a friend in special effects, and for a big budget film that came out 2 years ago, his only job was to make one of the lead actors' double chin disappear.
Oh my God.
That's all he did on the film. That's all he did.
Oh no.
One actor's double chin in this big budget movie that his name is on, that he's proud to have worked on. But that was his only job, was make this one guy look skinnier.
Oh boy. That's that I don't even know what to say about that.
So they can make you whatever. They can do whatever is what
I know, but it's like it's like on the one hand, I'm like, good for that person. And then on the other hand, I'm like, I can't believe that was someone's job / I can't believe like who knows the circumstances under which that decision was made.
To get rid of a double chin. Yeah.
How much?
Thousands and thousands of dollars.
Well, of course, but
on the film. Yeah.
I'm not saying he wasn't well paid. I'm just saying that, like, I don't know. I don't want to try to get into it because
they decided in the budget that they were going to budget for this kind of thing and spend the money on it.
Sure. Yeah. Of course. No, I know, but that's more what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the above the line decision to decide this was necessary.
We made it. He's too fat.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he's not fat. It's just kind of the shape of his face, I think. But anyway.
Yeah, don't say it while we're
I'm not going to say it. I'm going to text you.
But I am going to curious, like,
I'm going to text you.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Now, with all that now said, let's get on to the main course. But I guess there is a little bit of an appetite, which is we're going to circle back around to this after we like run through Shang-Chi. But I figure just really quickly, since I did watch it, I don't know if you did. I'm going to guess not. Maybe you surprised me. The most recent episode of What If, not the Doctor Strange one, the one that just dropped last night at midnight. Did you see that one yet?
Wait, see the newest of the What If?
Yeah, you'll know if you saw it.
Well, I saw the Doctor Strange one that we talked about.
No, the one after that. The one after.
But I did not see the one after. I only saw the Doctor Strange. So don't spoil the one after.
No, I won't spoil it though. If you go on Disney Plus, the title alone will tell you what's going to happen. I'll just. Sorry, I just saw your text. And why am I not surprised? I was quite certain that's who you're talking about. Anyway. Sorry, people. Okay.
Inside jokes.
I need a No, I'm just connecting so many other jokes that like go along with that. Anyway, I just want to say concerning What If. Obviously, the show's been going on for a while now. I think there's 9 episodes, so we still have a few more weeks. Which is cool because we haven't had a 9 episodes show since WandaVision. The other, Falcon, Winter Soldier, and Loki were both 6, which I prefer. I like it a little more compact, But since these are strictly half-hour episodes, even more so than WandaVision, like it makes sense to, spread them out. They're like they figure they're about the same production time, even though this is animated, so it's definitely different production time than a live action show. Yeah, but What If's really interesting. I like it so far. I mean, I've had a pretty different opinion of each episode, which I guess makes sense because they are very standalone in a lot of ways. Though, again, I think, and we're going to talk a lot more about this is when we get back around to What If and specifically talk about that Doctor Strange episode, which I want to save. There's definitely implications. Like Marvel doesn't do anything unintentionally. Like even if they think something's just like a fun story, like this week's especially, it was like, oh, that's a fun, just like concept. It's something that's been done in comics before. It's always a cool gimmick. But you like watch the episode and it's kind of surprising seemingly how much quote thought went into like figuring out the appropriate MCU way of doing this.
Right.
And like it definitely has implications because you're like, if that happened, because they're very deliberate with the Watcher and all this stuff to be like, well, this happened in this universe. So that doesn't mean it can't happen or something similar can't happen in other universes. And I definitely think there's little things in all these episodes that are meant to be deliberate teases or foreshadowings of things we're going to see in other universes, particularly the main continuity universe, the sacred timeline universe, whatever we want to call it. I would say 616, but given certain lines in Far From Home, I'm not sure we're supposed to use that comic book labeling system. Anyway, that's all to get that out of the way. And we're going to circle back to that Doctor Strange What If in particular in a moment. But let's talk Shang-Chi finally. So I got a text from you that basically said that you were like over the moon about this film. I believe I saw it before you, so I was already pretty hyped up on it. I wanted to get a chance to see it again, but like I said, which I would have. Like I would have gone to the theater to see this 2 more times by now.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I still might go see it again this week, but I had too much homework to do. I didn't have time to go see it. I did not be
contagious. Like that's my excuse. So that's
You're being responsible. You're being responsible. That's good.
Yeah.
Yes, I very much enjoyed this movie. Some of the elements that I think I really liked initially was that they had us read a little bit, and typically I don't like that for the whole film, but I like that it was true to the story.
Are you talking about subtitles?
Yeah, I liked that they spoke the traditional languages and made us work a little bit in the beginning because it gave. I think it would have taken me out of it if they spoke English in the beginning. I don't think I would have liked it as much. And I knew as soon as they started doing the subtitles, I knew that we were going to get quite a bit of it. I still was shocked by the total amount. And I was it was a lot. It was like 15 minutes, right?
But I was like, no, because it happens throughout the film. It's not like it's stuck. Sure. It's just in that beginning part. It's like throughout. It's what it really is like, it's a pretty accurate film. In fact, more so than other films. I can't think of one time, not even one time, where characters were speaking English where I didn't think that it would make sense for them to be speaking English. No, like every time they wanted to speak like Chinese, they were speaking in Chinese. And I was like, that's a great thing. It really helps sell the sincerity of the movie. I appreciated
that. It made me believe the story a lot more. I think I really just love the like magical realism that this has, like this idea that like maybe there could be a realm or a universe where like lion kind of hybrid creatures exist, and these kind of things that are familiar but not familiar, like the Firebirds. Like it's like, oh, we're familiar with this, but it's so different, but it's the same, and you recognize it and you don't. And I think that that's part of what I really loved about this movie. Another thing that stood out to me for this is I loved the costumes. OMG. The colors of the costumes in this movie is the cut of the suit that Shang-Chi and his sister get. Their suits were beautiful, but I think the traditional flowy gowns were my favorite, the ones that the protectors of the small village wear, and their colors were stunning. I also kind of sympathize with and see, actually, I'm going to bring it back to Doctor Strange. I see a parallel between the father in this movie, and all he wants to do is find a way to use all of his powers to bring his love back. And that's
very deliberate parallel. Very deliberate.
Yeah. He'll do anything to try to bring his love back. He'll use all of the powers and which of us could say that we wouldn't? If we had powers of any kind and they might help the people we love, wouldn't we try to use it? Aren't we supposed to identify with these villains, quote unquote, or these, powers used incorrectly in Doctor Strange's sense in that universe? we're supposed to identify with that. And I think for me personally, I absolutely do. If something happened to my sister or anybody, and I had some powers, absolutely. I will do anything. And I think that that's part of what love is, a lot of times what drives a lot of these villainous characters to be villainous is there is a loss of love. Even if you look at Star Wars, Darth Vader's lost his love and it makes him, I mean, it's his fault, but I think that that's the humanizing aspect for these characters. And you feel sad for them especially at the end of Shang-Chi, when he's looking at his dad and he's like, I'm just trying to get to your mom.
Wait, you know what? That's kind of crazy.
And he's like, she's not in there.
Hold on. I didn't even really connect this until you just said it, but it's so true. I think it was like on some subconscious level, it was so obvious. I didn't even think about it. I didn't think I needed to. I just always recognized it. But like they did like the entire fucking 6 episodes of Star Wars arc of like Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader in one movie with this guy. You realize that?
Yeah.
Like more or less. I think the only difference significantly is that when we like starts as a heartless villain, gets redeemed through his relationship, and then once he loses his wife, goes back through the dark side. But then ultimately,
possibly like, even more heartless.
Yeah, but like ultimately, like is redeemed by his son and sacrifices himself to save his son, and then like kind of goes out that way. But no, that's pretty impressive. And I mean, look, given that it's so condensed, I don't think it packs necessarily the same kind of impact as Darth Vader. But I would argue that in some specific beats and certain specific pathos, and certainly the performance, which this isn't me trying to take shots at Hayden Christensen or anybody, but like who I actually give a lot of defense for. But Tony Leung, who we're going to talk a bit more about, like what he's doing with this character, it actually is what gives it license to try to do that amount of story in one singular film, because an actor like that knows how to play every single note and like just brings so much depth to every single element of it. And we'll talk more about that coming up, because I think the character itself deserves a lot of attention. But I wanted to kind of like frame this in a just similar kind of way we framed other things in the past, which is this film. I mean, on the one hand, I think people might know, because if they've been listening to interviews, you'll notice that Kevin Feige has said this numerous times, which is a little bit like interesting choice to draw attention to this. Like, I think I can tell the positive PR spin on it that he's going for, but I also kind of think it's like, it's complicated. And when we talked about Kevin Feige before, I made a claim last time with being like, hey, like, look, I'm not trying to white knight the guy. I'm not trying to oversimplify the history of things that involve many people and many different forces. But I think it's fair, given what I know about those many people and different forces, or what can be safely presumed or said, that to simplify things down and to kind of like take the most obvious things at face value, so at least some of them, I think it makes sense to say, no, like this guy as in Kevin Feige is pretty sincere. So when he says something, we can have our bones to pick with it, but it's pretty good. And what I'm talking about is, he says Shang-Chi goes way back to the beginning of Marvel making movies. Now, there's a couple different notes with that. One is, we're going to talk about it, the actual Iron Man 1 first MCU proper film. But I actually recently like looked into this a little bit, not enough to go in too much depth on it, but I'll just throw this out there. It's very interesting that there were some attempts to shop around a Shang-Chi film, like way back in those Blade X-Men days, when Marvel was just trying to get as many properties of theirs into movie studio hands.
It just never moved.
Just never moved. And you might imagine why, because with Bruce Lee dead and Brandon Lee dead, Hollywood basically gave up on Asian American action leads. So yeah. but they could have done maybe with like a Jackie Chan Jet Li thing, which in the late 90s was still popular in to some degree in American cinema. So yeah, so that's the thing. They were actually shopping around a Shang-Chi, not script. I don't think there was ever a script as far as I know, but just like conceptually the property. Like yeah, they're like, oh, you could do like a martial arts hero that's owned by Marvel. The actual history of the Shang-Chi comic is also interesting. This was a comic from the early 70s, kind of right as that Bruce Lee craze and like the Kung Fu copycats that followed, like were really taking off, of course. And the comic, I forget both co-creators. One of them was Jim Starlin, who, wrote the Infinity Gauntlet and like created Thanos. So it's like definitely an important guy in recent and 70s Marvel lore. But, the whole point, my point is these guys were white guys, of course. And the character was written to be the son of Fu Manchu, who's not an original Marvel character, comes from the Sax Rohmer novels and also just like tons of movies and comic books from throughout the early 20th century, and was basically just meant to be like a racist caricature of like an evil Chinese sorcerer, always played by white guys. Like, and no like shade to the late like Christopher Lee, but Christopher Lee was known to play Fu Manchu. Yeah, a couple other people of note. In that Grindhouse, Tarantino Rodriguez project, they did a parody trailer, which I don't think should get people's ire, because the whole point is like to parody the fact that there were a lot of these like the Island of Dr. Fu Manchu movies in exploitation cinema, and so they had Nicolas Cage like Fu Manchu in one of these, and that's a really funny thing.
Oh man,
yeah. But just straight up, like there's no getting around it. The characters are doing Yellowface, like even if it's a parody of Yellowface, that's what it is. So there's that. But yeah, Fu Manchu was licensed to Marvel, and so they decided to use him as the quote father of Shang-Chi when they created the comics. So you'll know this is a little bit different than ultimately the direction, very different than the direction the movies ultimately took, but also just even different in the basic premise, because the character that Wenwu is meant to represent in Marvel canon is not Fu Manchu, but in fact, the Mandarin. The Mandarin,
yes.
The legendary Iron Man antagonist. Now, which is how we get to the actual kind of origins of this movie in terms of the MCU, which goes, again, something Feige has said recently, a lot of interviews, like almost like drawing attention to the gunshot wound, to be like, look, we got shot. Again, I gotta give the guy credit, like, because I think it's better to draw attention to it than, at least in some fashion, than to not at all, though he's clearly putting a positive spin on it to a large degree, which is, yes, go back to Iron Man 1. This has all been set up, I use in quotes, since then. Because obviously, and it's very obvious, this is not where they thought they would end up. They did not think that in 2021, they'd be releasing Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Doesn't matter what Kevin Feige says about, we wanted to do
when did you think they were going to release it?
Well, no, it's not a matter of when they release this movie. I imagine Shang-Chi as a character, because of even just what I said before about them having like this, it was always been on someone's desk somewhere in Marvel. Like I don't think that's made up at all. I think that's actually fact. What I'm saying
I
is,
think that's true too.
When they made Iron Man, they were in no way, Marvel knew they wanted to set up things like the Avengers to a degree and so forth. But Marvel had no idea they would be setting up a Shang-Chi movie. And they definitely did not think that that would be the debut of the character of the Mandarin or any of these things. They did not think that. Because, we know for a fact they didn't think it because of things they fucking said and did. So, let's talk about this. Iron Man 1, not a film I've rewatched recently. I thought about rewatching Iron Man 1 and then Iron Man 3 before seeing Shang-Chi in the theaters. But I just realized I didn't have time for it. And I almost was like, maybe it's better to not have that too much in my head. But, you know, that's where when you talk the 10 rings and all that stuff, that's where this comes from. So here's the thing about Iron Man 1. Iron Man 1, of course, directed by Jon Favreau. And I remember, I didn't like re-look up these quotes. Like, so I'm going off of memory, but trust me, they're real quotes. Because I used to read all this shit on the internet every day, like obsessively, like a crazy in high school. So Jon Favreau would, and when asked, he'd be like, "Oh, Iron Man. Iron Man's arch nemesis is the Mandarin. Is the Mandarin gonna be an Iron Man?" He would be like, "No, the Mandarin's too magical. The 10 rings and all that stuff, it's magical powers. We don't want that." Because Iron Man 1 especially, but really most of Phase 1, and I am including Thor in that when I say that, had a very strong mandate seemingly to be, quote, grounded. Now,
I see that.
Yeah,
I
you do see it.
that. I mean, Thor, yes, from another realm. And he's probably the one that's pushing it the most. But Iron Man is like that. I mean, is that so far away from being Jeff Bezos right now, or
no? Look,
Elon Musk. Are we far from that? No.
No, and look, Bezos and Musk, though technically they were around and already very rich. Were not really in the same sort of cultural parlance as they are today. So the basis for Tony Stark was more in terms of like how the movies thought him. It also had the comics based him, was much more based in Howard Hughes, which is why Howard Stark is named Howard Stark, right?
Oh.
Yeah. But that being said, the Iron Man 1, for everything it is, yes, it uses the CG Iron Man and like all this stuff, and when Iron Man's fighting Ironmonger or Obadiah Stane at the end, it's pretty whatever. But it's a very grounded movie. It's really just explosives. There's not like powers of any kind. It's like the Iron Man suit is powered by a special fake technology, which at that point did not have the level of like mythological ties that it later took on through further retcons. Because now when we think of the arc reactor, we think of literally the space stone. That tie did not exist when the movie was originally set up. Like that was retroactively created, which is actually one of the more interesting aspects of like tracking that through the MCU is because look, the Tesseract still comes up quite a lot in interesting ways. Like even that first What If episode, the Captain Carter episode does a bit of
can we talk about that for like 30 seconds?
Sure.
How is it that she can touch it?
Wait, what?
She grabbed it in that episode, and I was like, "What's going on?" I thought she couldn't touch it. Do you remember that?
No, I don't. I'm trying to remember.
She grabbed it, and I was like, "Oh no!" And then nothing happened, and I was like, "What?" I thought she couldn't.
You're talking about Peggy Carter grabbing the Tesseract?
Peggy Carter grabbed the Tesseract. She picked it up, and I'm like, "She can't do that."
People can
but
hold
she
it.
Just did it. Yeah. Let me find it.
Huh. Yeah, sorry. No, like I my memory of that episode is pretty hazy, I'll be honest. I was watching it late at night and I was like a little bit drowsy, but like I'm pretty sure I didn't miss anything. I mean, I remember exactly how it ended and everything.
It very well be. Maybe I'm just making it up in my mind.
I don't think you're making it up,
but I'm sure that I was like, wait a second.
But like, I'm a little confused on what you're saying. The premise here is like, what's wrong with touching it?
Only a god can touch it. You can't touch the Tesseract.
No, people touch it. People touch it.
Do they?
Like Nick Fury touches it. Everyone touches it.
Am I mixing up the Tesseract with Infinity Stones where like you can't touch it, it'll destroy you?
No, the Tesseract is an Infinity Stone. It's the space stone.
That's what I thought.
No,
I thought
people
that
can touch them.
That.
People, okay.
But maybe because it's in a square, you can touch it and it's not loose.
I'm pretty sure there's nothing about touching a raw Infinity Stone. Like I could be crazy, but I'm pretty sure it does not do anything. The Power Stone is the only one that if you touch it, it'll start breaking you down that I've seen. Or like if you touch the ether, I'm not sure what happens. This is a very minute level question because honestly, I haven't given it a thought. Now you're trying to make me think of like all the different rules from all these different movies. But I'm quite certain that there's nothing wrong with touching the Tesseract. That being said, I can see why you might think that because they always make a big deal about putting these things in boxes and containers, like just the thing at the end of the Avengers where both Thor and Loki, who are, by the way, really just Thor because Loki's in cuffs, who are like gods, they have powers. They're holding it in a special case. But that doesn't mean you can't touch it with your fingers. Obviously, Thanos does. Thanos touches those bitches constantly.
Thanos is a powerful being.
I know.
I thought you had to be of a certain power, like a supernatural power. So like Captain America wouldn't be able to touch it either, hypothetically, but Thor might be able to.
Well, Captain America, I think if I was going to include people that would be on the touch list, I think Captain America always got to be included. He can literally wield Mjolnir.
Oh wait, does he self-heal too? Does he self-heal?
No, not really.
No,
he has a higher tolerance. He heals quicker and has a higher tolerance for pain and damage, but like he doesn't like have like Wolverine healing. He doesn't have a regeneration like that.
Maybe I'm just making it up that I thought they couldn't.
I know exactly. So there's a couple different things tied into this. For the record, because I'm sure there's fucking psycho fans screaming their heads off right now listening to this. Okay. Calm down is rule number one.
Wait. Let's pause for screams. Okay.
Enough screams. No. I'm gonna. Here's what I'm not gonna look anything up because I feel like I could be reading the fucking Marvel wiki for 2 hours to try to figure this out. Let me point out the very simple and obvious stuff. Okay, number one. Yes, typically each of the stones when they're introduced is introduced within another object that's basically made of the stone. It's a different color. The exception is the Soul Stone, which it just appears on Vormir after you kill somebody. It's crazy. In the water, we've seen the scene twice, once in Infinity War, once in Endgame. The other ones are all housed within other objects. Those objects typically are carried around in other cases or containers throughout the MCU. We see different ones several times. The Power Stone's in that orb, the Ether is in that little cylinder, the Tesseract's in several different housings, including that metal briefcase that S.H.I.E.L.D. uses.
And then Project Pegasus, they put it in another cube.
Yeah.
So inside a cube.
So there's a lot of different iterations of cases and boxes. However, with the exception of the Power Stone, I cannot think of a single. The Eye of Agamotto too, notably. With the exception of the Power Stone, I can't think of a single instance, unless I'm really forgetting something big, where a stone just touching it does damage to somebody. That never happens. Now, the other thing I think you're thinking about is how in Endgame they make the point that wielding the gauntlet will do damage to you unless you're a super powerful being, which is why Hulk is the one who ultimately does the snap.
Maybe that's what I'm confusing it with.
Yes, but it's not about touching them. Now, again, you have to keep in mind that people like Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, who are scientists, are very, I know Tony Stark himself as a personality is not considered to be cautious, but when he's doing his science stuff, he uses his tools. So when they're, for instance, putting the Infinity Stones into the Iron Gauntlet, they're doing it using special tools and rockets, don't touch. So there is all that in there, but it's not quite meant to indicate, as far as I can tell, that just touching a stone with bare hands will kill you or do anything to you. It's more that
I thought the Infinity Stones could only
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
You can only touch it if you have a lot of powers yourself, I thought.
No, I think you're confusing. I think you're confusing touching with using.
Oh.
Okay, because again, this is what I'm trying to get at. Using and touching are not the same thing.
I could pick it up, but only Thor could use its powers for something. But I could just hold a rock,
But I think here's where the line gets blurry / why, again, I think you see the level of caution that you see in these movies, which I'm telling you varies and is context specific. And you could look at that as inconsistencies with the lore. But I actually tend to give it the benefit of the doubt to say it's actually just different characters exercising different levels of caution within the universe and within character, right? Because again, if I just touch it, technically nothing is supposed to happen. but touching it might accidentally cause it to be used, which would do damage depending on who I am or what's happening, right? So it's dangerous to touch it. It's like touching a loaded gun. It's like if you don't have to, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
That's the idea. So, for example, again, in that scene in Endgame, what you see is they're very delicately using special tools, inserting the stones into the nanite iron gauntlet, right? And Rocket makes jokes about fucking like exploding it because that's what Rocket does. He makes jokes about explosions. So it's not, again, it's like you have to take character into consideration here. I don't think you're meant to necessarily think that, oh my God, if I touch the time stone, everything, I'll like die. Like that's not what you're supposed to think.
No, I could pick, but I can't use the time stone to travel in time, but I could maybe just pick it up and hand it to people or carry it.
Well, again, each stone, especially individually, works a little differently. Like I'm pretty sure you could use the time stone. You wouldn't use it well. It'd probably fucking cause all sorts of problems to the universe if you tried to, because like you need to like properly control it with like mystic arts. Like that's whereas the mind stone would just likely control your mind. The fucking ether, I forget what that fucking does. It kind of like melts you, but also like changes reality. So Thanos uses it to create illusions and stuff.
If I remember, the orange one was the soul stone.
Orange one's the soul stone.
And that's supposed
that would probably just actually like suck your soul away.
One. Yeah. So if I
it's the one we don't see actually get used for anything.
Not yet.
Not yet.
What
the fuck? Why are we talking about Infinity Stones? This is like so like fucking 5 years ago, Dana. God, like what are you doing here?
Because we just watched Doctor Strange episode of What If.
That only involves the time stone, technically, and
I know it does.
Yeah. Okay. No, hold on.
We're
supposed to be talking about 10 rings and totally different things.
Of Agamotto.
Okay. I'm gonna get us back on track here because like, we got way off from where we were supposed to go with this. Now, I was actually making the explicit point how none of that shit existed in Iron Man 1. Iron Man 1 is about a dude who builds a suit with a box of scraps in a cave.
Yep.
That's what happens in that movie. It's grounded. So from Jon Favreau's perspective, the 10 rings were too magical, which means he would have thought the Infinity Stones are too magical as well. Okay. So Iron Man 1, no magic, no aliens, nothing. The big three, well, I guess robots. Wait, what are the big three that he says? Aliens. Fuck, I don't even remember that now. That's a Falcon Winter Soldier reference. But yeah, I like that idea, the big three. I think technically robots are in the big three, so that counts. Iron Man includes robots. But I mean, well, not really. It's just the suits. They don't have like Ultron or drones or things like that yet. Now, let's talk about what we do get in this grounded Iron Man 1. We get an organization called the 10 Rings. And what are they? Well, Marvel doesn't really want to draw too much attention to this anymore, but the idea back then, and you could see how this fits into grounded, particularly like late 2000s Bush era idea of grounded, which is the 10 Rings are a bunch of generic Arab terrorists. That's what they are. Like, they kidnap like Tony. Mafia. They kidnapped Tony somewhere in the middle of the fucking desert. Like, I don't know if it's meant to be Iraq or what. Like, they're very loose about these things on purpose. Because again, you have to just keep in mind the context of like Hollywood at that time and like what was considered normal, not just because of norms, but because of like what was, you know, the politics at the time and et cetera, right? So you have these generic Arab of seeming terrorists. They kidnap Tony Stark. And this is all, by the way, standing for, in Tony Stark's comic origin, he's in Vietnam and so forth, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I think is interesting about this too, and in terms of the plot of the Iron Man 1, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but it's, I think, an important thing to frame, like, again, like the differences between 2008 and 2021, right? Is the whole idea here about like what the role of Tony Stark, this weapons dealer, is with these terrorists and with his becoming Iron Man and all that stuff, right? Is like the terrorists, the 10 rings, again, because they're the idea of quote calling the organization the 10 rings, I'm pretty sure is an MCU Iron Man 1 creation. I don't think that really had been a thing in the comics as far as I know. 10 rings were just the actual 10 rings that the Mandarin wielded. So because they didn't want to do magical Mandarin, but I would assume Jon Favreau was thinking, and there was some quotes at the time that led to this, oh, we'll do the Mandarin in the future, but I don't know if he'll have the magical powers. So we created this terrorist organization that's responsible for kidnapping Tony Stark that we call the 10 rings. But like I said, they're just a generic, like kind of Arab terrorist organization as presented in Iron Man 1, forgetting what we learn later, right? So the whole idea in that movie is they're not even the real villains, because they're, again, they not only are they generic terrorists, but like they're cannon fodder for Iron Man, just come in like the cool plane, back in black, just blow shit up, right? And then fucking you find out that Obadiah Stane, Jeff Bridges' character, is the one selling them the weapons. Yeah, this brings up a really, really kind of strange, like kind of the MCU, almost like doing politics by accident, but then also like totally obfuscating from it in the weirdest of ways.
Like maybe, what it reminds me of is recently in Black Widow, where it's like, you didn't think you were the good guys, did you? We were just good guys.
Kind of, yeah, no, it is kind of like that. Yeah,
we're on both sides of everything.
Oh, both sides, yeah. Okay, so, right, no, that yes, that goes along with it. But so, the framing of Iron Man 1, and I'm not going to get too bogged down in like explaining what's quote wrong with this in the real world. I'm just going to expect people to follow my drift here on that. Air Force and U.S. military, good. Terrorists, bad. Stark, as in Stark Industries, sells weapons to both. Okay. But really, it's just Obadiah Stane, because Tony Stark doesn't know that the weapons are getting into the hands of 10 rings and terrorists and stuff until later in the movie. And so therefore, Tony Stark is totally unconnected to the system of this weapon selling and bears no responsibility for what's happened beyond just like now I'm Iron Man, and since technically Stane works for me, it is my fault. So the way I solve problem is to kill Stane. Kill Stane, problem solved. And this is all done with like, also, I guess, like in the lead up after Iron Man into Iron Man 2, which presents a whole new set of problems, is like, he goes around as Iron Man. This is what Iron Man basically exists to do for those first 2 years of his existence. He goes around and destroys the weapons that Stark Industries had previously sold to terrorists. And also he does this with no supervision, and in fact, scorn from supervision from the United States Senate and Congress. And it's like, oh, fuck that shit. Of course, later we find out that Senator Stern is part of Hydra. So that's the very basic recap. And like I said, I'm not like going to try to break down what's wrong with that picture. I want to let people kind of marinate on it, and hopefully they get what I'm saying. But all I can say to all that is it just makes me think of like the Pepe meme with this creepy smile and the fingers up, like Marvel just being like, we're like, don't pay too much attention to what's going on here. Just know that Iron Man's always good, even when he's being an asshole, even when he's obviously not right. He's always good, and everyone else is bad by definition, and we'll worry about it later. So don't think about it. So that's Iron Man 1 and also a little bit of Iron Man 2. We don't really get anything specific on the 10 rings in Iron Man 2, notably. But this brings us to a little movie called Iron Man 3. And Iron Man 3, I almost actually thought about last week before I realized I just wasn't like going to be physically able. Was like, maybe we should just do an Iron Man 3, a quick Iron Man 3 special. Because I hadn't even seen Shang-Chi yet. And I was like, let me just see that. Or let me just do that. And that'll be a good, like, again, reason to rewatch it, blah, blah, blah. But I'm kind of glad I didn't, even though now I'm like excited to go back and rewatch again. But just to say, Iron Man 3, right? written and directed by Shane Black, who people might know from Lethal Weapon and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and The Good Guys. Great filmmaker, in my opinion. Definitely has some particular flourishes and specifics. One could almost say even a formula. And Iron Man 3, despite being an MCU superhero movie, despite being the third movie in an Iron Man franchise, despite being the first Phase 2 movie after the first Avengers, kind of follows the Shane Black formula, which is what leads it to some very interesting avenues. Now, I'll just say real quick, as for people who don't know, or maybe they do because they've listened to our previous episode where they saw where I put in my rankings, but I'll elaborate on it a little bit here. I unironically love Iron Man 3. I think Iron Man 3 is dope. I fucking always loved it. I loved it when I first saw it. I've loved it every day since. I love it today. So I
love it. I love it because it got me into the union. And
that's true. You have a very personal connection to it. I forgot.
It's how I got my SAG card. So yay, Iron Man 3. But also I have to say my favorite connection between Iron Man 3 and Shang-Chi is Trevor Slattery. The sleeper favorite of mine from Shang-Chi is Trevor Slattery. How do you go wrong with Ben Kingsley?
Well,
you don't.
That's what I'm here to talk a little bit about, Dana.
Because about Trevor? We're going to talk about Trevor?
We're going to talk about Trevor. No, we're not going to talk about Trevor and Shang-Chi just yet, but we're going to talk about Trevor in Iron Man 3 because this is why I'm bringing. Yeah, no. But this is why I'm bringing it up, because keep in mind, I'm trying to reset us back to 2013 when this Iron Man 3 came out. People did not know about the Trevor twist. This was kept secret. Okay.
Well, I don't think I knew about it until I saw Shang-Chi 2 days ago.
Wait, hold on. Okay, hold on. You're okay. That's an interesting statement from you. But I will say, yeah. So in the lead up to Iron Man 3, before the movie came out, the word on the streets was Mandarin. We're getting the Mandarin in Iron Man 3. We cast Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin. Now, I was on the internet. This is what I'm saying. I didn't re-look up these quotes. I remember them well enough to paraphrase everything that was said. Okay? So people can take that with how they will, but I'm not, this is all accurate. There was question. There was some question, but not a lot. Not very much. Not nearly the kind of question there would be now. People were like, Ben Kingsley, he's part Indian. And people were like, and this is how Marvel spun it, which you'll notice they did this again later on, and we're going to talk about that too. Marvel's spin was, well, one of the reasons we didn't want to do the Mandarin, even going back to Iron Man 1, and remember what I told you, the actual reason was the Mandarin was too magical, which they also said here, is because we didn't want to play into stereotypes. So here they are acknowledging that the Mandarin comic book character is a racist stereotype, because the Mandarin basically is just Fu Manchu, except he's got the magical 10 rings. That's the only difference. So, before they had the quote rights to Fu Manchu and creating the comic character Shang-Chi, they were like, we need a villain, an evil Asian villain. They create the Mandarin. Then they have him fight Iron Man, and he becomes the Iron Man's arch nemesis, which has always been an interesting thing. Iron Man, tech-based hero versus arch nemesis, an evil Chinese sorcerer. I don't know. Maybe that's one of the reasons Iron Man wasn't as popular until after the movies. I'm not kidding. It's kind of a weird fit, even though I know comic fans, if you're a big Iron Man versus Mandarin fan, I hope we do get Iron Man versus Mandarin content in a what if or something down the line. That would be awesome. But just put a pin in that for a second. So Marvel was like, we're avoiding dealing in bad stereotypes. This is the right way to handle it, by casting a non-Asian actor in the role. And instead of making him an evil Chinese sorcerer, he's a generic something terrorist, head of a generic something terrorist organization that's threatening America and the president. And again, this movie comes out in 2013. So, in Obama's second term, but it's got a very kind of Bush era outlook on things, like because Iron Man, especially the way they set it up in Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2, kind of is a little bit frozen in that era a little bit in a weird way that's weird to kind of look back at. And as a result, you like all the marketing, like all the trailers for Iron Man 3 and really the first half of the actual film frames all that at face value. Ben Kingsley does this crazy voice like he's a comic announcer. And he's like, Tony Stark, you think you have what it takes, but I'm coming for you. And it's like, what is going on? And it makes no sense. Now, you go back and watch the movie, especially if you know the twist, you can see, and even actually when you're watching the movie the first time and you don't know the twist, if you're paying attention, you can kind of see, or even if you were paying attention before the movie came out, because even though they were talking about this Ben Kingsley Mandarin stuff, it was notable that they kept talking about AIM and Extremis and Aldrich Killian, and then the way the movie opens, which I know you're in. If you're paying attention, you should be like, I think maybe this movie's more about Guy Pearce than this guy. Like, if you're smart, you're going to figure that out. But I guarantee you, even if you are getting ahead of that curve, which I was, nothing can prepare you for that moment where in a very Shane Black-esque scene, Tony Stark raids this mansion, not even with his Iron Man suit, because they basically took him out of that for a lot of this movie, which, again, very cool choice that kind of lets Shane Black cook in a different kind of way. He just like comes in there with a gun, like he knows what he's doing, but he's really just an idiot, and finds Ben Kingsley without his costume on doing drugs with prostitutes. And I'll never forget the reaction in the theater. People were like, but also laughing. And immediately I was in love with this Trevor Slattery thing. I thought this was the most genius twist in a movie ever. I loved this. Yeah. I fucking lost it. I was like, this is so funny. This is so great. I didn't even mind, because I definitely didn't think this was great in the same way or good at all, because that twist is definitely the big twist that gets the big reaction. But the way the movie actually has to conclude its story, because it did set up all this stuff with Mandarin and terrorists, right? Well, yes. The movie instead has Killian come out and be like, actually, it was me behind everything. And I'm the Mandarin, because the Mandarin is just an idea and I'm the one behind it. And also I've been using Extremis, so I have like weird like energy powers, and you need all the Iron Men to stop me. So yeah, awkward ending, though I do like it. I want to just clarify. So that part didn't exactly work, but overall, I thought Iron Man 3 was brilliant. I loved the Trevor side. I love the Trevor Slattery character. So when people started to kind of riot against the movie, and like, again, go back, people were fucking pissed. Like there was like more like
Iron Man 3, people were pissed.
Oh yeah. I don't think people. Dude, comic fans. So many people were upset. And this was again, there hasn't really been a reaction like this since in any MCU movie of people being very mad about an adaptation choice of the MCU. Like, I can't think of one time since that's happened. They've actually avoided it, which is crazy. It's actually shocking that this really only happened the one time. No, people were genuinely like annoyed that Marvel made the decision not to avoid dealing with the quote racial aspects of this character, but actually they were mad that they didn't get their beloved supervillain arch nemesis of Iron Man, that it was a fake, a phony, and that they did this Trevor Slattery twist. People were fucking pissed about it. And as a result, Kevin Feige, and I remember all this happening, had to be a bit on the defensive about it. So for the first way this was reacted to was, oh, yes, the twist, we thought it was a brilliant twist that Shane Black presented us with, and we loved it, and we stand by it. But also, just because Trevor Slattery exists does not mean that the real Mandarin and the 10 rings, because remember, the 10 rings are also in Iron Man 1, don't exist. So they kept saying that, and it was a weird thing to say. Well, I don't think they knew they were going to do this until they did it, mind you. So I don't think this was like pre-planned at all. But when the Iron Man 3 Blu-ray and DVD came out, it came with a Marvel one-shot. And Marvel one-shots were something they were doing back in phase 1 that they haven't really done since. Though they've come back in a big, big way because they've been putting them up on Disney Plus, and they particularly, notably a week before Shang-Chi dropped, put this one up on Disney Plus for everyone to see, which is called All Hail the King. And it's an epilogue to Iron Man 3 starring Trevor Slattery. And if this is where like you haven't seen this?
No.
Oh, you got to go watch it. What are you doing? I figured you must have seen this. I figured you must have seen this.
Really,
so this is the actual setup. This was the actual setup, which is why I knew Trevor Slattery was going to be in this movie.
Is it a whole project?
It's a 15-minute short film.
15 minutes, right?
Yeah. Give or take with credits and stuff. But basically, I'll just recap it really quick. Trevor Slattery is in jail because in Iron Man 3, he is arrested for his involvement, even though he's like, as he reminds you in Shang-Chi, he's like, I didn't know it was for terrorists. he's like, I thought it was just an acting gig. So he plays the innocent. He's like, I was on a lot of drugs at the time. But he's in jail. He's like the cool guy in jail, like weirdly, like all the fucking like big tough guys like have his back. He's like, oh, hey, Nathan. It was just like, this is very funny. But of course, a couple of people try to pick fights with him, and like the other big guys come and save him and stuff. But it turns out he's doing an interview, and the interviewer is played by Scoot McNairy, which is kind of like, it's your first tip that like, oh, they wrote this character and cast him thinking maybe he might show up. He does not show up in Shang-Chi unless he's like in a blink and you miss a cameo, which they wouldn't do with Scoot McNairy. So,
right.
I was surprised they maybe just wasn't available or they couldn't figure out a way to squeeze it in. But basically what it reveals is Scoot McNairy works for the actual Ten Rings and expresses that he's upset that Trevor Slattery stole his boss's identity. So then this is our first confirmation in the MCU. And this is like 7-8 years before we got Shang-Chi. That yes, there is a real leader of the Ten Rings, nominally called the Mandarin, who's mad at Trevor and what Killian did. And since Killian's dead, they decided to get Trevor. So he breaks Trevor out of prison with the presumption that they're going to kill him. Now, obviously, as we learn in Shang-Chi, they didn't end up killing him. But he's still there. But I'm not surprised. I kind of knew like they're holding him for a future appearance. It just took a long, long time. And that was what Kevin Feige told everybody. He was like, oh, yeah, see? The Mandarin is real. Ten Rings is real. The Trevor Slattery thing is just a unique little wrinkle for Iron Man 3. But hey, they're all going to come back one day. Just wait for it. And then years and years and years and years until 2019 when we get the announcement Shang-Chi's coming. And even then, they didn't confirm that Trevor Slattery or any of that was going to be in it, but they did confirm that Tony Leung is playing a character that's meant to be the Mandarin, and we are going to learn more about the actual Ten Rings and all that stuff. So that brings us to Shang-Chi. Well, I guess one last thing I just want to say about All Hail the King and again, the framing of all this is that, it was this quick response turnaround, and it really just felt like Marvel was doing the whole, like, have your cake and eat it too thing. You know what I mean? Where they're just like, oh, we got to, like, do that. It pissed some people off, but we'll pretend like it was our plan the whole time. And that's basically what they did. Now, one other thing I want to note too before we jump into Shang-Chi, because this is also really important to getting why Shang-Chi is what it is and why it's so special. So they did the Trevor Slattery thing with the Mandarin, which to my mind is, really kind of what I call like fixing problems with more problems, or like a very cynical solution. It's like saying, oh, well, we want to do the Mandarin because he's Iron Man's smart nemesis, but we know it's problematic. But, well, they don't say this part out loud, but it's kind of the implication. Well, what we definitely can't do is cast an actual Chinese person because there aren't Chinese actors. So we can't do that. And if we did, we'd be racist to do it because it'd be a stereotype. So what we need to do is just cast a non-Chinese person, and then it might still be weird to have them be a generic terrorist because it's 2013 and we're already a little bit past that era. We kind of still tied to it because we did in Iron Man 1 and stuff. And I don't know, it's fun to do a Shane Black movie where there's generic terrorist villains, but I think we need to go a slightly different direction, hence the Trevor Slattery twist. Hence the Ben Kingsley casting where they were like, again, people took it at face value. So there was this weird discourse or not lack thereof about like Ben Kingsley, British Indian guy playing guy who's originally Chinese. So I guess the character's not anymore. And then, he's actually just an actor from Liverpool. So that makes more sense. Like it's this weird, cynical problems on problems approach. So that was rejected, but it was rejected not for necessarily those reasons. It was rejected because it wasn't paying homage to this important comic book villain. So Marvel had the excuse basically not to learn the lesson. And so they didn't. And when they came to make Doctor Strange in 2016, they had to deal with the fact that Doctor Strange and I don't want to get too deep into Doctor Strange, but it's important and it will frame our what if conversation too. Doctor Strange is a white guy who learns mystic arts from Asian people, notably has an Asian sidekick named Wong, and his mentor is known as the Ancient One, which in the comics is another Asian wizard dude with long white hair and magic powers who's kind of a prick.
Yeah.
So what Marvel decided they were going to do when they did this, well, they cast Benedict Wong as Wong and were like, the character's more rounded. So they actually made the right choice there, but they downplayed that because they didn't think that was what was important. They put all their attention on the Ancient One. And I remember the headlines. I remember reading the articles online in the lead up to Doctor Strange about this. Well, we don't want to play into the stereotypes about old ancient Asian wizards. So actually what we're going to do is we change the character and we decided that they're actually Celtic.
Got it.
But in asterisk, what we're not going to mention, but it's very obvious when you look at the movie is we're still going to do all like the Asian Indian stuff with like the Kamertai. We're still going to do all that. But we're going to change the leader to a white lady played by Tilda Swinton.
Tilda Swinton.
And again, I love Tilda Swinton. I love that they haven't hidden the Ancient One away.
It was a weird casting choice, though.
It was. And people, so I'll get to that.
I get that they wanted her to, they want the character to be ethnically ambiguous because I understand that aspect of this eternal being. Like you kind of don't know if they're masculine or feminine because they're both. And I think that's what they were thinking of casting wise, but they could have very easily done that with an Asian actor as well.
Yeah, they definitely could have easily done that with an Asian actor, but like also like it's interesting to bring that aspect up because, you know, Tilda Swinton definitely is someone who likes to be androgynous. I don't know much else about her identity or lifestyles related to that. I'm pretty sure she identifies.
It's definitely her fashion, like her fashion style.
Yes, but sense, yeah, right. That's
her hair, her
features.
If she's wearing no makeup, but she also, if you remembered her career, she plays the angel Gabriel in Constantine. So that's another thing. Like she's
played male characters. She played male.
And she's played male characters before. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so I get
yeah.
that. I get why you want that character to have those qualities. Absolutely.
But
they could have. Yeah.
Well, no, I was just going to say my whole point about that is that's all true. But I never got the impression, despite all that Marvel is really trying to lean into that idea with Tilda Swinton. And if they did, I would have thought that would be much cooler. They didn't really do that. I guess you could say at best, like they had they were in some ways making use of it. But it's like cynical problems on problems because it's like, not only are you not leaning into that aspect the way you could have, but you are, again, at best obfuscating from the obvious problem with it, which before I just highlight that, I just wanted to say also, like, I respect, because I like Tilda Swinton, I liked the Ancient One for what she was or they were. because actually that's a really interesting question. I don't know if the Ancient One identifies in a gender that I remember in the context of the movie, whatever. But they reappear in this Doctor Strange What If, and they were in Endgame. And so I appreciate that they've kept the character around despite the problems, because the reality was, this is the difference even between 2013 and 2016, is when they made these decisions, you could tell Marvel thought they were being shrewd, even though they're clearly being cynical. Like, oh, look at us. See, we're not playing into stereotypes. See, we're not doing that. But people actually call them out this time. Like, dude, what you're doing is you're whitewashing the character. You do see that, right? Like, you're taking a role that could be for an Asian person, giving it to a famous white lady and pretending like we don't notice, because
and pretending that this character that's been around for so long is not who we thought they were, essentially.
But I mean, in a lot of ways, like, again, Marvel thinking they're being ahead of the curve or being smart, but really being cynical, the assholes, thinks they're being clever. Like, they think they're being like, see, we're not doing the bad thing, right? And it's like, no, you're doing the worst thing. Like, you fucking assholes. and look, I get it, because like this is what they're trying to hide. What they're trying to hide is they don't want to have to, like, when you almost like the casting along kind of gives it away, because you go back even a few years, like in this pre-Crazy Rich Asians like kind of thing, like this pre kind of like Awkwafina being in movies thing, like there's not that many notable named actors of Chinese or Korean or Vietnamese or any East Asian descent. Like, it's just not a thing. There's always been people, and there's always been stars in Hong Kong, and there's always been some crossover stars. Not a lot of big ones in a while. Like,
I mean, in America, it's John Cho and Daniel Day Kim for me. Those are the hottie hots.
Well, yeah, you have your John Cho's and Daniel Day Kims, but even those guys are like, they would be the first to tell you, we have not gotten our due.
No, they have absolutely not. I mean, Daniel Day Kim was on, the first time I saw him was obviously Lost.
Yeah.
And then John Cho is Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. That's like high school for a lot of us, a lot of our generation. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, John Cho from back then. How do you know?
He was.
And right now we've got, what's his name from Crazy Rich Asians, crazy hot guy, Henry Golding. Yeah.
Well, look, again, that's what I'm talking about. We're pre the Golding era, but like,
we're pre all
like,
of this era.
I'm saying that's changed, and that helped pave the way for Shang-Chi. But boy, Shang-Chi's paving the way for itself in a major way. But I just want to say that, like, what I'm getting at is, you look at the cast of Shang-Chi. Why wasn't the Ancient One Michelle Yeoh? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
oh my God.
Right. But it's very obvious now. Or fuck it, you could have kept the character male. Why isn't Tony Leung the Ancient One? Why is it, it's because fucking back then, even though we're not talking that long ago, we're talking 2015, basically. People thought that was unthinkable. So it didn't even fucking, like, they're bearing the lead with all this shit when they're trying to like be like, oh, look at what we're doing. See, we're changing the character against stereotypes. It's a fucking mirage to hide the reality, which is they have zero confidence in Asian actors. That's all it is. That's all it's ever been. So obviously, between that getting called out and major shifts in the broader culture and Hollywood experimentation, not to mention the success of a film like Black Panther, caused the Disney and the MCU to rethink it. But notably, and this is how we'll start with Shang-Chi now. They called it an experiment. Dana, you heard about this?
No.
Okay. So it was probably about like a month ago. Bob Chapek, CEO of Disney, was on an investor call, and he goes, in reference to Shang-Chi, which, as you know, now we know opened to fucking $90 million at the box office. Big deal. That's nearly double what people thought it was going to get.
Is it really double what they projected?
They were projecting like 50 million.
Wow. Well, because of COVID, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because of COVID. Right. That's what it is, Dana. Yes, it's because of COVID. This is what I'm trying to tell you. I'm saying don't fucking listen to these people. They're so transparent with their bullshit. And Simu Liu fucking knew they were fucking full of shit. So here's the deal. Now, I'm not saying COVID wasn't a major factor. It was. But just understand the context to which people think whether they want to be aware of it or not, right? So Bob Chapek says, in reference to Shang-Chi, because it was only opening in theaters, like they were looking at this like a liability, or at least to the investors they were. Because remember the whole like debate about the streamers versus the theatricals, and look what they did with Black Widow, right? And now they're paying the consequences for that one, with the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit and all that. But they were like, oh, well, Shang-Chi is an experiment. That's what he said. And now, here's the thing you got to understand.
What? Why would you use that word?
Exactly. But now, what he was clearly trying to say, and when I say clearly, I mean like, let's give him the, quote, benefit of the doubt, even though it's not much of a benefit. And this is what he would tell you. It was like, no, what he meant was because we're not putting it on Disney Plus, it's an experiment to see how a theatrical only release on Labor Day weekend, and notably, because Shang-Chi now is the record holder for the highest Labor Day weekend gross. Labor Day is not a weekend people normally open movies, and certainly not big movies.
Yeah,
we talked about this in reference to Free Guy and Suicide Squad and the whole late summer blockbuster season. But yeah, we're like late. Like normally a film like this would open in July, which is when it was originally going to open, by the way. And you would summer, like, and it's Labor Day weekend is like the dead zone for movies. You don't open movies there unless you think they're like, that's why the record is relatively low. But they said, oh, we're going to open it and we're going to do it theatrical only as a, quote, experiment. Now, Simu Liu, who plays Shang-Chi, and boy, I have a lot to say about this guy, but like one of the big things about him, and not only does he have the charisma on screen, which I only really found out by watching Shang-Chi. But I knew going in.
He's incredibly charming.
Yeah, but I knew.
And has a very genuine delivery about him. I think he's a very talented person.
Have you seen the sitcom Kim's Convenience?
I did not. And is he on that?
Yeah, that's his show.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Well, I guess it's over now. It's over now. But like that's where he came from. He came from off the show. And people who've seen it, I've never seen it, but people who've seen it say he's amazing on that show. Very funny, very cool. But really, this guy, like going all the way back to his casting, is the type of guy who gets on Twitter and speaks his mind and is like a self-advocate and is like unafraid and unashamed to just be like, yo, I like give Asian guys a chance. Like straight up, even before Marvel announced Shang-Chi, he was like tweeting them, be like, when are you going to get an Asian superhero? Then they announced Shang-Chi and he's like, are we going to talk? Now, allegedly, that had nothing directly to do with him getting the casting call. But obviously, once he's in there, it's like, what, did you like tweet us like a couple months ago?
Absolutely. Shoot your shot.
Right. So he has a reputation of being pretty outspoken. And like, I think, again, it's a big credit to his now stardom because like, that's what it really takes. He's really putting himself out there and like is looking good doing it, to be honest, even though like some of this stuff, I guess in some cases, I know some people will criticize him for this. I don't, but I could see the case of like, even this specific reaction to this experiment stuff as being like, this guy's being such like a oversensitive PC boy, blah, blah, blah. Like getting all like bent out of shape. This is just like liberal Hollywood nonsense, like taking everything at offense. Not like there were people who were saying this, but like, let's really unpack what happened here with the experiment line, right? So Bob Chapek says that. Simu Liu responds by going, we are not an experiment. Like, and then goes on to say, like, we are the blah, 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 the hope of a generation, blah, 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 like a bunch of like really highfalutin shit, like take himself very seriously. I fucking dig it. And I'm so in agreement because here's the thing. It's not like, I don't give a fuck what you say. it's not whining PC, him taking offense at things that don't take offense. Because the truth is, Bob Chapek's implicit fucking bias when he says it's an experiment is obvious. Let's not be glib, people. He knows what he's saying. He might not want to know what he's saying, but he knows, because it's the same shit that led to the Ancient One. It's the same shit that led to all the other decisions we just outcome. There's an implicit doubt when it comes to Asians leading a movie. It's not like came out of nowhere. There's a long history of this. It's just because Marvel now says they're making Shang-Chi and make the movie. Granted, they get credit, but from the big bosses up at Disney, they're like, well, we have to frame it the right way, because if it fails, we don't want people to think it's on us. So what he's doing there is he's lowering the bar. He might say he's low, hedging the bet. He might say he's lowering the bar because of COVID, and of course COVID's a factor. But do you think he would have used the same language if this was a movie starring Robert Downey Jr.? Of course not.
No.
So let's not be stupid. Let's not be silly. So that's my point about this is Marvel, for all the shit, and Disney, it really is more a Disney thing. For all the credit I want to give them for Shang-Chi, I don't think they're out of the doghouse, in my opinion, yet. Shang-Chi succeeds in spite of a lot of these things, not because of them. So it's really a credit to, again, this, and I'll white knight Feige. I think Feige's the guy leading the charge, at least from the white boy side of things, to be like, no, we need to do what we did with Black Panther with this. We need to have hire an Asian director and have a pretty much all Asian cast, and have a great all Asian cast with legendary actors, because there are legendary actors
who actually speak the language.
Yeah, a guy like Tony Leung has really never been in a Hollywood movie of any kind before. Right. I mean, the guy's been a legend. We talked about Chungking Express. Please check out that episode. It's one of my favorites. Guy's a fucking legend. Yeah. And you can tell if you've never seen him in a movie before, and then you watch him in this movie, you can fucking tell what he brings. He brings a real person with real story and motivation, and he's fucking cool. He has his Hong Kong George Clooney vibes out big time.
Oh, he absolutely does.
Big time.
The white suits, with the black suit.
Yeah.
The suit. Yeah.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Get it, King.
No. And it's like, he's no stereotype of any kind. So this is the point, man. For years, they're like, we can't do the Mandarin because we stereotype. You did it. Was it a problem? No. Because all you've had to fucking do is actually have some fucking confidence. All this has been a crisis of confidence, and a pointed one and a problematic one, but that's all it is. It's not having the confidence to be like, yo, what if we had a guy who's actually a Chinese guy who's fucking interesting? Was it that hard? No,
they're just too greedy. They're like, well, who else? How much did the last time that we did this make? Oh, no one's ever done this before. You don't have any money to compare it to, so let's not get. It's a risk.
Well, that's the systemic reality. But I'm saying even underlying the systemic reality, and why the systemic reality needs to be circumvented and overcome, is a fundamental insecurity and doubt that, yes, is inherently like racially biased. That's what it is. But I'm saying, like, acknowledging that in and of itself doesn't get you anywhere. What you have to do is actually take the leap of faith to do something about it. Right. But like, once you do it, of course you're going to be like, oh, was it that hard? No, it wasn't. It wasn't hard at all. Like, seriously, Hong Kong cinema is full of incredible talent, and not just Hong Kong cinema, but I'm just pointing that out because that's where Tony Leung and Michelle Yeoh come from. Like, well, but isn't China like the second biggest market in the world for movies? So like, and Marvel's been trying to fucking eat that shit up for years. In fact, Iron Man 3 was the first movie they really made a special edition of for China. And guess what? That's a lot of money. There's a lot of money in China, movies in China. Oh, I'm glad you brought this up because I wasn't going to talk about this. But do you know about the Chinese version of Iron Man 3? I know that it has been edited to be different, but I don't know how. Okay, so they added this whole random subplot with characters that are not in the rest of the movie. What? Yeah. When I say subplot, I mean like out. I didn't realize they added stuff. Yeah, when I say subplot, I mean I'm talking about like 5 minutes probably worth of content. But it's like some Chinese actor and his like secretary or something. He's like, we have to help Tony Stark. Or I don't know I haven't seen this, but I know it exists. Really weird. And they did a similar thing with Age of Ultron, and they've kind of moved away from that in large part. But like, yeah, and then look, Shang-Chi hasn't opened in China yet, actually. So we'll see what happens there. Yeah. But it's they're not that to that point. They are, despite all the Chinese language and all that stuff, this is a film for the rest of the world, sincerely. And I think that that's a great thing. I really do. And the director, Destin Daniel Cretton, did just a remarkable job. And he's another one of these directors coming from the indie world, kind of stepping up into the Marvel thing. And I think that when it comes to getting like a Tony Leung to give the kind of performance he gives, I give Destin a lot of credit for that, presumably, because this is a guy who like wants to really level with actors on an emotional level and like really get into that sort of space with them. And like, it really shows, because I think Tony Leung's the type of actor who like would never phone in a performance ever. But like, imagine if some just whatever hack journeyman was directing this, doesn't care about Asian culture, doesn't really care about these characters, comes in to direct this. He might just be like, yeah, whatever, we're moving on. Destin Daniel Cretton didn't do that, clearly. He was like, I really want you to think about this guy's motivations in every scene. Like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about where Wenwu's at with regards to the relationship with his children in this moment, the relationship with his wife, etc. So they were giving that type of depth to it. Of course, we also have the lovely talents of Awkwafina, who was like basically the first person to cast this movie, which was like an obvious thing. But like, I remember hearing the news before they even formally announced the film, I was like, oh, okay, that makes so much sense, because even if they weren't doing an Asian focused Marvel movie, Awkwafina in like that MCU, like, oh, I'm gonna be the character that banters and that makes too much sense.
Yeah, you need the comedic relief, and she absolutely brings it. She's hysterical. But actually, her story, as a beginning archer myself, I've really enjoyed. She discovers.
Are we going to talk? I was planning on talking about it, but the arrow from heaven.
Yeah, basically,
it's caused some controversy. What, as an archer, what are your thoughts on that?
So archery is, from what, as a beginner, I've only been doing it maybe like 6 months, 8 months now, I can't remember. It's about your posture and having confidence in your posture. So if you're going for short distances, you just keep your feet at shoulder width apart, and then with a straight body, you make a T shape like you're Jesus on the cross. But then you take your pointer finger for your dominant hand, look to the opposite side. So if I'm right-handed, so you take your forefinger with both your arms outstretched, you just look to the left and touch your chin with your right finger. And if you're going for distance, you take a half step back with your outside foot. So once you learn those things, just what I told you, you 100% can be Awkwafina in Shang-Chi. Everybody listen. You two are capable of helping slay the monster from another realm. It just takes confidence in your stance and repetition. And the fact that she just was like, I'm just going to go for it.
It was a high shot, though, because
it's a high shot.
Yeah.
Like, so that would mean,
so she would have had it angled like up like at like 80, 70, 80 degrees, like right. Like,
so she would need to put her outside foot all the way back and arch her back in her stance. She could do it. You can do it. It's notable we don't see her draw.
It's notable we don't see her draw.
Oh, I guess we don't.
No, you see the arrow flinging, and then you see her reaction to it landing, but you never see her actual draw.
I'm curious also, because maybe they're prop arrows. Because for real,
the arrow that you see go through is definitely a CG.
Well, it's
arrow.
digital. But I just mean the props that Awkwafina was holding specifically.
Yes. The dragon arrows.
The tension might not be easy to pull because they're props. So for real archery lessons and classes, you get the tension made for your own strength. So my tension is at 20 pounds. If someone's less strong than me, their tension might be a 16 pounds. So for props and stuff, they might have just had a really cool looking bow, but maybe it was 22 or 23 pounds. And she's just like, my arm hurts. It doesn't look straight. It doesn't look good if you can't pull it all the way. Maybe something like that, because she should be able to do the pose and do the pull with just like a teensy bit of coaching. So maybe it was a choice to not show her pull. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, look, here's my stance on this controversy. It's not dissimilar to yours. Like, honestly, when I saw the arrow, I was like, of course. And is it a little silly that just like after one day of training, she's getting a shot off? Like,
you get a lucky shot.
Hold on. I'm not disagreeing with you. You're the expert here, not me. What I'm saying is from a narrative. Because the real reason, most people don't understand shit about archery. They assume it's hard, obviously.
It's difficult to be precise.
Yeah, it's difficult.
It's not difficult to get lucky. It's kind of like when you play pool.
I was going to say the dweller is a giant target. It's not like some tiny bird.
Yeah, it's not a tiny bird. It's not moving quickly.
Huge.
Like, do I think Awkwafina's character could hit basically something the size of a mountain? Absolutely. If they were shooting clay pigeons, I would probably say, no way, she's not going to hit a clay pigeon. She's not ready.
It's also, I mean, there's a couple other factors in there. And again, from a physics or just like an archery perspective, maybe you can speak to them a little bit. I'm genuinely curious.
Because I'm studying physics.
Because look, my point is that my point narratively is that it doesn't really matter. The reason people react to this is because the lack of narrative setup and narrative payoff. Whether they want to, people think it's about stuff like, oh, what about the complexity of archery? You don't know anything about it. You don't give a fuck anything about it. It's narrative. That's why your brain is like, wait a minute. If her chin is up and her knuckle is under her chin and she's got her stance right, anybody, you can do it. But my question just on this, because I want to put this to bed for people if I can, one way or the other. But like, it's not only, it's one thing, because obviously the dweller is a huge target. Even its neck where she hits is a big target. But like, it goes all the way through. So I'm just kind of like, what level of force is really happening there at that height? Like, that has to be like a real tense arrow. That's what I'm saying. They established that the arrow tips that their people use are scales, the dragon scale tips. So they are the ones that can pierce those creatures from the other realm more easily. But in my mind, your throat, if you hit it in the right spot, like even now, you and I, it's easy to push a pen through your trachea and you can be fine. I've seen, you know what I mean? There's a hole. It's like hollow there. So in my mind, when she hit that, she hit a spot in the throat that's mostly hollow. So like she hit the two sides of the straw. Of the dweller, no, of course not. Darkness, of course not. Yes, but I get what you're saying. He's breathing some kind of stuff, and he's got some kind of a respiratory system. So I'm like, oh, she got some kind of the trachea. You know, like if it's a straw, she had to really just pierce the two sides and the middle part is empty. Maybe that's what I thought happened. When I saw it happen, I was like, oh, she got him right in the trachea, right behind that little hole. Got him. Now he's at least injured and they can take him down, which is what happened. Right. Fantastic. So I love the discovery of her own powers in that moment. Yes. When she's like, my teacher is gone. I watched his soul get sucked out of his body in front of me. The person that I turned to for protection and advice is gone and I'm on my own now. And for the first time in the whole movie, I think she's really on her own. Awkwafina is... Let me jump in here to say this though, because I just really want to conclude this point in terms of just like narrative structure as the structuralist mind of our time, really. No, seriously. I mean, I could write a McKee book for you. The reason people have latched onto this, I'll give a couple little caveats here that are unfortunate. I think anytime a woman does anything, every time a small Asian woman does anything, there's always going to be that wait a minute thing that people have implicit bias about. So there's that. But I think if she was like some like strong man, people would be less inclined to say something. But think that she could have made that shot. Yeah. But putting those things aside, I genuinely think that the reason for that reaction, because look, there are people who definitely would be like, how dare you imply that I have some implicit bias, and who have an issue with it. The reason they have an issue with it, because they don't know 99% of them, and 99.9% of them don't know shit about archery or physics, and pretending that that's what it's about is stupid. Okay, what it's about is narrative pacing, right? So if Shang-Chi was about 15 minutes longer, and, I think the writers are very good writers. They actually make a lot of good structural choices, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. If they had a couple more 15, 20 pages to work with here, what they might have done is they would have said, Act 1, we introduced that Katie is not, it doesn't even have to be anything directly connected to archery, but Katie is trying to improve herself in some sort of physical coordination kind of way. And that the reasons for this are deeply felt for her, right? So you would have set that up in Act 1. Then in Act 2, you would have had her show a little bit more development, but also kind of still fail. So now you have this failure. Then you would have had her come to Ta Lo, or if you could have had her come to Ta Lo even a little earlier, start to have that training, maybe have that training sequence be a little longer, show some trial and error, show a little bit more improvement. Then you have that big moment where it's like, holy shit, I did it. Now, all of a sudden, instead of people being like, how'd you fucking do that? People would have been like, that was like the best moment in the movie. And the reason for that is because it would have been properly a payoff to a narrative arc that's been diligently tracked, where you actually have an understanding of there's a need, there's development, there's progress, there's trial and error, there's failure, there's an emotional connection. And then the payoff actually feels like a significant reward for that investment, right? So that's what's missing here, is that we don't really have that in this case, because Katie, the best setup we get is just the idea that
we get like a little piece of that where she doesn't do well in the training and she's disappointed when he says you're not ready. But then immediately after, it's like, well, we need you.
But that's all end of Act 2, beginning of Act 3.
Small.
That's what I'm saying. That's the issue. Mm-hmm. It's one of the most rushed setups you could possibly have. And my main issue is not only is that a rushed setup that happens at the end of Act 2, beginning of Act 3, depending on how you want to break it down, there's no real tangible connection to anything set up in Act 1 or in the beginning of Act 2 at all. Only the loosest of things.
Like it might have been cool if Awkwafina's character, when they were in working as valets, if she was obsessed with archery or archers, or had pictures of Legolas around.
They could have
or something like that.
I very purposefully didn't say that, because I get what you're saying, and that would have been that would have in most cases you would have done something like that. But I think to have Katie be the same character she is in every other way, for her to have some interest in archery preemptively would have been a little silly. So
it could have been. Or something.
No, I don't. My point is, you didn't need to do that.
Badass like that.
No. My point is, I don't think so. I don't think you needed to do that. What you needed to do is set up. I didn't specify, because again, finding the right thing is a little tricky, and I didn't get paid to write this movie, so it's not on me to tell you. But I'll just say what it needed was something that had some sort of actual arc of success, desire for success, emotional stakes, failure, trial and error, overcoming, that was actually strung through Act 1 and Act 2. It didn't have to directly be anything to do with the arrows or shooting or anything combat related. It could have been something a little bit more generalized that would have applied to her ordinary daily life. Like maybe it was it would have been good if it was something about precision. Like maybe, I don't know. I'm not paying pay to come up with a clever answer here. But the only thing you do get, and this is why it doesn't work, is it's this very loose, very vague, very underdeveloped general thing that they set up with her in Act 1 in the scene where you meet her family, where it's like Katie has no direction in life. So it's almost like the arrows are supposed to be a metaphor for direction.
Oh, I never thought of that.
No, yeah, I mean, they more or less explicitly say it in the end of the movie. They're like, or no, in the scene in Ta Lo, she's like, you need direction. If you don't know what to aim at, you don't ever go anywhere. So you never hit anything.
If you aim at nothing,
it's the
nothing.
loosest, like, and again, I feel bad saying this, but I can't help it. It's the loosest kind of fortune cookie metaphor ever. And so it's like, hey, come on, you guys can do better. That being said, it's better than nothing.
It's cute.
That's not good storytelling.
It's cute.
Okay, you can call it cute all you want, and like I said, I'm not the one making the big stink.
A life truth.
I'm not the one making a big stink about the Arrow thing. I didn't really give a shit. I was fine with it. It's a MCU movie. I was like, no, and I'm not saying that as a cop-out. I'm saying that is like they all tend to devolve into like these big combat set pieces, and it's better that Katie does something than Katie does nothing.
She's about to be part of the team, right? They're about to induct her into becoming an Avenger somehow, because when he goes to get Shang-Chi, he says, "You come too." Is she going to be?
I'm going to need you to, we're going to talk about that, but I'm going to need you to put a pin in that for just 1 second. I'll just say, I didn't really care. Like, there's definitely better ways to do this all around, but I just wanted to point out, because people have been complaining about it, that the reason you're complaining about it is not because you're a fucking archery or physics expert. It's because you're trained to want a completed narrative arc for something like that. Like the same way you would say, in a general logic sense, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. In storytelling, extraordinary feats require extraordinary setup. This did not have that. This is an extraordinary feat without the setup.
Without the setup, yeah.
So that's kind of what we're dealing with there. But what I really want to talk about was Shang-Chi, because this is the reason I really love the movie. Yes, it's the character work. Yes, it's Simu Liu. Yes, it's Tony Leung. Yes, it's Awkwafina. But what really floated my boat about this movie, and I'm sure did a lot for you, is the actual arrival of genuine martial arts action in a big budget Hollywood film and in an MCU movie.
Yes.
And they did a lot here that, like, you can pick quibbles with little things, but and I'm definitely interested to hear your thoughts on some of it. But I want to start with just this opening sequence, which was such a treat. And it was great storytelling, introducing us to Wenwu and the whole setup. And I had no idea about the angle with the mother or Ta Lo going into the movie. I knew there was some stuff with some mystical stuff and magical creatures because you could see it in the trailer, but I had no idea how we were going to get there. But the actual fight between Wenwu and I forget the mother character's name, the woman played by Fala Chen, straight up a homage to like wuxia films, and specifically I would say House of Flying Daggers, the Zhang Yimou film from the early 2000s. One of like the greats of the genre. And I just loved seeing that. I was like, first off, they're speaking Mandarin, and then all of a sudden you're in that. And it's like, I knew they were going to get a little bit of this, but to like start me right from the opening and to have like the great score that they did, which used a lot of the traditional Chinese instruments and stuff, and just the beauty, like they were going like Destin and Cretton didn't just like say, oh, I want a little bit of slow-mo and wire fu. And like, he actually was like, if I was making a House of Flying Daggers, let me like go all the way. Let me go full Zhang Yimou with, Wenwu Ping, or I'm messing up his name. Once I start saying too many of these names, unfortunately, as someone who does not speak the language and gets details confused all the time, I start blurring names together. I'm forgetting the name of the guy, but the very famous stunt choreographer for Crouching Tiger and House of Flying Daggers and a few of those films.
Yes.
And he also worked on Kill Bill. I know it's Ping. I'm sorry. Really, apologies to everyone involved. Sorry about that. But obviously he didn't work on the film. Brad Allen did, who's another important figure in Hong Kong cinema, but who passed away recently, which is why the film was dedicated to him. But I just really love the attention to that specific style and using that as a sort of like romantic storytelling device. Like, I love that. I thought that was super cool.
I want to interject here for a moment, because if anybody out there has studied martial arts, You saw this movie the way I did, which was this movie was a visual representation of my introduction to Tai Chi.
Yes.
Which is Tai Chi is what is her style of fighting. And it seems like the husband or the dad's style of fighting, Tony Long's style of fighting is more judo, taekwondo, aikido, karate, closed fist. They actually really focus on the closed fist versus open fist. They focus on the closed fist versus open fist. And open fist actually is equally as powerful because you have a smaller area of your hand. You're doing just the side part of your palm to strike. And what you want to do, what you're striving for is something called relaxed rigidity, which you can move and flow like water, but you're tense. So with this mentality, you see that when you're fighting, you are never fighting your opponent. You are accepting the forces that they're giving you and redirecting them, which is what they do in this fight dance. You're never fighting your opponent. You're never trying to counter their power because they may be stronger than you. They may be bigger than you. So counteracting punches with punches, you might lose. But if you take those punches and just use that energy or move out of the way of that energy, it saves you all of that damage. It's just slight movements and thinking about water, thinking about that the forces coming at you that your opponent is throwing, it's water and you just have to move around it.
No, that's such a good point. And I really love the way they emphasize that. And actually, again, like use it as a storytelling device, because the way, Wenwu's style, not even just when he's using the 10 rings, but just in general, is like this very forceful, aggressive,
Aikido,
super like closed fist, just like slamming and pounding and like really trying to bash your face in type style. And the way she just like you said, redirects his energy, pushes him like back. And like that gives him that opening in that slow-mo to kind of like stop and take a look at her and be like, oh, that girl's hot. Which it was almost a little hokey. It almost started to crack up a little bit when I first saw it. But like, I realized the hokiness and crack upness of it actually was like part of the experience in a good way. So I really, really love that. But, you mentioned the flowing like water. And that, of course, makes me think of Bruce Lee, which is a good segue to talk about even like, because again, this film blends a few different types of martial arts. That's why I'm saying it's so great to see the whole breadth, or as much of the breadth of martial arts action film from East Asia cinema kind of be represented in this film and used and appropriated in the correct kind of way to make it like part of the fabric of the MCU and like a big budget Hollywood film with modern special effects, which I really feel like that brings the real dream of Bruce Lee, who we lost too soon's life into focus, really. Like he would be so excited to see probably what's, assuming he doesn't also suffer a tragedy, Simu Liu's career going forward, because that's what he's all about. Like, how do we get an Asian lead in Hollywood? That's what he wanted to be. Now, the scene that I want to focus on next, which is the next big action set piece of the film, and is probably by far the best one, is the bus fight. And the bus fight was awesome. Not only do you get a little bit more of the Bruce Lee flair, I would say what we're really getting, this is where, Brad Allen's role in the film probably comes most into focus. We're really getting the Jackie Chan action flair. Like it's very police story, not only because of a bus, but like those things using a jacket and wrapping up the arms, all that stuff. But yeah, go ahead. Talk to me about the bus scene.
Well, I was going to say, yes, that Jackie Chan definitely, I got Jackie Chan vibes for the bus scene, but specifically, I got Rush Hour vibes from the bus scene because of Awkwafina. Awkwafina was giving the energy that we would expect, from maybe a character like a Chris Tucker character to be the like screaming comedic relief while Jackie Chan's
Hong Kong films and even some of his Hollywood films before Rush Hour also have that energy to them too. So I meant Jackie Chan as all inclusive here.
Yeah, all inclusive here.
Yeah,
but
no, I did.
Made a mental note of like, this reminds me of Rush Hour. The bus scene makes me think of Rush Hour.
I think the San Francisco American setting definitely contributes to that. And I agree.
Helps. Yeah.
I agree. There's definitely a Rush Hour vibe, but like really, I like I said, I really think of the breadth of what Jackie Chan and that kind of sort of was the like
tight space
Peking opera
too.
kind of school of like really high performance, high stunt, high comedy action kind of does, and it's really
comedy action.
Really,
that is what it is. Yeah,
but like I like that this scene
Comedic
it doesn't lean. And it kind of takes what Marvel's always done, where it's like you have those, like I said, you have that color commentary and those one-liners, but like rarely is it go full Jackie Chan in terms of like the actual action and movements and physics are purely played for laughs. There's a couple of those moments and they're very well timed and paced, but for the most part,
there's
you
not
get
a lot of
more
them.
of that straight up like brutal like kind of wushu stuff where it's like I'm just gonna be like, again, doing a split kick to kick the two guys at once, doing the elbows, doing the full like palm thrust type movement. And I like how that the action in the bus, there's a couple little well-timed flourishes where it gets really full Jackie Chan in terms of like the action itself being played or the stunt itself being played for like that comedic thing where they're in danger, like, oh shit, like, or the unexpected reaction of like of an effect to the cause, right? And obviously you have your Awkwafina color commentary, but I think what really kind of works about it is the intensity kind of really actually. And that not only do I owe to Bruce Lee and other general kind of like Hong Kong action martial arts films, like Wing Chun Kung Fu type of action stuff, but also kind of a little bit of an influence from like new Korean cinema with things like Old Boy, because if you look at like some of the specific shot choices, right, that Cretton uses, it's like you have the profile shot of the bus and like the guys just kind of coming at him and like throwing them out the windows and shit. And it's like pretty intense and violent.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, I was very pleased with that. And side note, including in the most recent, I noticed how on What If, because it's a cartoon, ironically, they get way more violent than they ever do in the movies. Yeah. Which is an interesting note. But Shang-Chi, I'll give him credit. Like, yes, it's PG-13 and all that, but like, you feel the impact of a lot of these hits, which again is new for MCU because I'm not trying to shit on it because I actually really love those Russo brother Captain America films, especially Civil War. I know a lot of people really ride for Winter Soldier, and I think it's a good movie, but like it's not really my favorite. It's kind of like in the middle of my rankings. But that's the closest, and by closest I mean like pretty far down we've gotten to like actual visceral action in a Marvel movie that where you feel impact to things. And like I'm saying, in comparison, what they're doing with Shang-Chi, it's like one's like here, one's like way out here. Like in Shang-Chi, including even when it's like the more power-based stuff, like when Wen-Nu uses the 10 rings in his like I said, closed fist, like just bashing style, I fucking feel the pain. Like it doesn't strike me as what often happens in the MCU, where it's just like, it's like, I don't know, marshmallow guys hitting marshmallow guys. I mean, that's what it feels like. And I'm used to it. I'm okay with it. I'm not like crying about it, but boy, was it refreshing to have something that did not feel like that. And it really worked with the genre and all that. Related, I also really enjoyed those, even though they're brutal, but that's what I enjoyed about them, those flashback sequences with Shang-Chi's training and like the way you see like,
yes,
because that's just very classic Kung Fu movie shit.
Well, part of me was a little disappointed they didn't have a full-on wooden man. They just had the wooden post. I'm like, oh, they didn't have the arms.
The wood post is hard, and that's someone who used to hit.
The wood post is just as hard, but the wooden man is traditional. So that's what I thought they would have.
The wooden man would have been good just to see him go full like this multi-hit type of combo techniques and stuff. But what I appreciated about the wood, I appreciated when I saw the first trailer that revealed that, and I was like, oh, this is going to be important to the story because they have the old him going back and seeing. Well,
that gave me Kill Bill flashbacks for sure. The punching the same piece of wood.
You're
over
right. And Kill Bill did this for me, but like when I used to do karate, I used to hit the wood until my knuckles were beaten and bloody like that. So I've done that. I'm like, not a smart thing to do. I know it's badass.
Broke wood boards with an open palm.
But it's like, I'm not even talking about breaking the boards. That's a whole separate thing. Just like straight up hitting wood to toughen your hands. Like,
nope, that's not typically.
I mean, I do feel like a pussy all the time now because my hands aren't hard like that anymore. But whatever.
But you probably also don't have a lot of.
I don't have bone problems that I can type comfortably. So yeah,
you can type and don't have minuscule hairline fractures that have healed over the years.
Yes, given what I do for a living as opposed to being a cage fighter, it's probably better that I've went the route I went. But yeah, and then speaking of cage fighting, we get that Macau sequence, which was awesome. And that's kind of like really. I mean, you get Xia Ling, and you also get. We'll talk a little bit more about it and some of its peculiarities. We get our fucking Wong versus Abomination. We also, I don't know if you noticed, got in one of those like little like tinier cells. We saw a widow fighting a guy with Extremis. So there you go, like a reference to Iron Man 3 and a reference to Black Widow. So that was cool. But yeah, what's Abomination been up to, and why does him and Wong seemingly have a relationship already? We'll find out, man. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background right now that I'm like, I want to know what the fuck's really going on here. And I assume we're going to get the answers so I'm not like, I don't think it's a tease to nothing. But obviously the main purpose of the Macau sequence, other than having that awesome, set piece where, Shang-Chi gets to finally get some revenge for his training by fighting Death Dealer, though I kind of wish they took out that character there instead of having, I'm not sure if it's a he or him or her, having them be just like devoured by a soul eater in the third act out of nowhere. That was kind of weak sauce. But yeah, that's also how we get Xia Ling. And that was actually a really cool character that I didn't know about at all. I had no idea. I mean, I remember seeing the lady in the trailer, but I had no idea what role she was playing. I did not know that was Shang-Chi's sister. No idea. So that was like actually one of the genuine surprises of the film. And that's how we get back into the compound when we learn a little bit more about the 10 rings, including having that great scene where he makes fun of the name, the Mandarin.
Yeah.
Which I loved. I love that. I love that they like.
Everyone's scared of an orange.
Well, because this was actually a question I had, because I remember thinking like, okay, they're going to do the Mandarin proper. Cool. But he is still called the Mandarin. And so I felt like vindicated because I remember thinking that. It's like, that's like a stupid fucking name. And if you were an actual Chinese supervillain that was meant to be taken seriously, you wouldn't be called Orange. The fucking Mandarin.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that.
I love Xia Ling's character.
Yeah.
I love that she gets hers in the end. And I see her becoming a supervillain in the future. Do you see that for her? Now that she's taken over the 10 rings. And I think that she is in a good place now, but emotionally
I have a
seems
theory.
Like she could easily go to a dark place and give in to her powers.
They definitely
and be worse than her dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
because she has all this anger towards people that even though she's gotten her vengeance, that anger doesn't just die. You're still an angry person.
So I fully recognize that what you're saying is more than possible. Like the setup of that stinger definitely.
I see it where he's going to have to fight her again. Yeah.
But I don't think they're going quite there. I think where they're going.
Down the road after the third film.
No, yeah. But well, okay. Well, if you're talking way, way down the road,
I think eventually she's a villain. Yeah.
Well, I think where they're going in the more immediate that I think, and I'll elaborate on more on this when we talk about it in more context, but I think they're setting her up to be part of like this kind of anti-hero universe that they've been built. That's what I'm saying. They've been setting up a lot more of these types of morally gray characters. And I kind of think maybe that's where she's going, is they're going to bring all those characters together to do like I said, Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers or something like that. So I mean, I'm putting her in the box with like U.S. Agent and Yelena Black Widow, and you know what I'm saying.
I think she would, yeah.
The Allegra Fontaine kind of
okay
stuff. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm gonna recheck in on that for you in a little bit. But yeah, good catch on that. But it's also where we can finally talk about him in the context of this movie, Trevor Slattery's return. And
it's my favorite.
I mean, everybody in my theater lit up, including me, though I was kind of expecting it because I remember when Shang-Chi premiered, I saw Ben Kingsley on the red carpet and I was like, I know they're going to put Trevor in this because here's the truth. And this ties in, but this is the good thing. So for all the negative I was talking, remember I said I always loved Iron Man 3 and I always loved Trevor Slattery. I always did. Like, take all the complications of why we got him, just focus on what's in that movie and that performance and what it did in the story. I was always 100% not only in favor, I was actively defending it against the haters. I was like, I don't give a shit about the quote Mandarin. Trevor Slattery is fucking funny. I love it. It's good. I hope we see more of him. And when we got all the Hail the King, I was like, oh, great. We're going to get our cake and eat it too. We're going to have the real Mandarin and we're going to get more Trevor Slattery. And then they made us wait 8 years. But seriously, Iron Man 3 came out like right before I moved to Los Angeles. And now here we are. Like literally my entire time I've been living here, I've been waiting for this. Yeah, I remember. Yes, seriously.
Finally, here we are.
Seriously, like it's really wow. That is quite a timekeeper. But I was like, I was excited, and it was a great opportunity for Marvel to be like, yes, we're fixing our mistakes, but part of fixing our mistakes is, you know, especially for Kevin Feige, who's always defending the Trevor Slattery thing, to like double down and be like, yeah, but if you didn't love Trevor Slattery, you kind of should. We're gonna remind you why it was awesome.
Who doesn't love him?
Yes, we're awesome, and we're gonna make him a big part of this movie, where it is like all about the Asian cast and Wenwu and all these things. But we're gonna use Trevor Slattery here too, and he's gonna play a big role in the movie. And I was like, I was so glad they went that way with it.
Incredible.
It feels like super vindication for me and all the Iron Man 3 stans, even as this movie is like in many ways a repudiation of Iron Man 3. So this is actually the flip side of having your cake and eating it to not being cynical or lame, but actually being great. So I was really happy with it. And just like the Planet of the Apes guy, which everyone's talking about, that was great. Morris, the weird little fucking thing.
I want one. I'm just gonna say it now. I want
you and everyone else except me, because I don't like shit like that. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
It's so cute. Where's your face? You don't need one. He's sensitive about it.
I did like that one. No, I mean, I love the Trevor's at the end playing dead. That was so in the character when he's like teaching the people in Ta Lo how to play football. All that stuff is fucking great.
Oh, I loved that. And I also felt like, well, and maybe we'll see I'm right or I'm wrong, but out of all of the places, I think Trevor is meant to be in that world, in that realm. He's perfect for like story time and soccer for the kids, like the fun times. Go to Trevor's little school of fun when you need a break from fighting.
I think as far as we know,
put on plays for the kids and teach them soccer.
Hey, as far as we know, he stayed there. So
that's what I'm saying. I feel like he would be in his own little Trevor paradise if he just got to like teach recess every other day and do plays with the kids, and then, you know, play with Morris. It's I think the ideal place for him, but we're probably going to need him to play another role soon.
Well, I hope we see him again, but this is a perfect segue to now talk a little bit more in depth about Ta Lo and the lore that we're getting, because it's a lot actually, and a lot given to you very quickly. So first off, I know you're a big mythology person, but like, how familiar are you with like Chinese myth and East Asian myth and things like that?
Only a little bit. I know some like random myths that are like actually Cinderella was initially an Asian story. Also,
really? I did not know that.
Yeah, Cinderella was an Asian story, and my favorite part was that her stepmother turned her real mother into a cow, and then told Cinderella she had to do all these ridiculous chores, like you have to divide the grains of this bag, and if you can do it by midnight, then you can go to the ball. But it wasn't a ball. It was like you get food. So she had to divide, she had to do all these ridiculous tasks. And it was her mother as a cow that helps her actually succeed. So it's not a fairy godmother. It's her real mother turned into a cow. And this eventually made its way to Eastern Europe. And then the story got to the Brothers Grimm, and it changed and it changed and it changed. But the original Cinderella is Chinese. So that's one of my favorites, but I don't know much about this myth except that it reminds me of, there is a story that's very similar to the biblical story, the tale of Jesus. And there, I think his name was, I'm going to look it up because it's like XI. Hong Jiaquan. And he supposedly was a magical prophet, mythical prophet whose story was similar to that of Jesus Christ. So
I mean,
there's
that
a
part
lot
to
of
me
myths
is not
that are,
particularly
recycled. And a lot of our current myths that we think come from other places actually come from ancient China.
So I think the part in terms of, no, that's interesting. I guess you, again, maybe that you have a little more familiarity than you might realize, but like I think the thing that was interesting for me was because the focus in Ta Lo seems to be on like the creatures. And that stuff that why I don't know, like I couldn't...
actually, there is something I have to say about this.
Sure, go ahead.
So there is there's Chinese myths about these spirits called jinn that live in objects or trees. And jinn can try to trick you into doing something stupid, or they can help you and benefit you in some way. And this this gate, the voice of his love calling to him is a trick that the jinn used to pull, changing their voices into a familiar voice, calling you to an area that you should not be, that was not safe. They could be hiding in a tree. They could be hiding in a rock. Jinn can be anywhere. And it made me think that this, these monsters kind of embodied some of the more malevolent jinn characters, where they kind of have this siren's call and they can get you to do stuff that's good or bad.
So no, I think you're spot on about the jinn and that role. And it again, I didn't know about that in particular. At least I don't think I did. I might have some very, very passing familiarity with some stuff like that. But yeah, the way it's purposed in the film with Wenwu hearing the voice, I was like, yes, that's a very mythic folklore type of setup. And I think you're right in terms of like, yes, the spirits kind of lure you into a trap and all that stuff. But like when it comes to what's actually behind that gate, I want to put a pin on that for another few minutes. But just to focus here on the creatures, the good creatures, I guess, of Ta Lo. Like, again, I'm not super familiar with Chinese or East Asian folklore in the direct sense. Like I couldn't quote you too much. I mean, I know things like Sun Wukong, the Golden Monkey, that stuff, which is an ancient Buddhist Sanskrit kind of story that's all over East Asian culture. But I do, because of just various movies and TV shows and things like that have drawn on these influences, I do have like a very passing familiarity. Well, like when I say passing, I mean like instant recognition of things like guardian lions and nine-tailed foxes and firebirds and water dragons. I understand all those things. So like it was actually, I don't know what Morris is exactly. So whatever the reference is for there, that's escapes me. But everything else instantly like, oh, I've seen those before, which is, again, really fucking cool to see Marvel do them. But yeah, I love that they went to Ta Lo and it was all about those creatures. And I love that it was like, yes, we all serve under the great water dragon. And that's actually like a big source for Shang-Chi and his like power and his martial arts is like, he has this connection to the dragon. And I thought that was like, again, really cool and felt very appropriate, like using Chinese myth in a way, like, not dissimilar to the way like Norse myth forms the basis of Thor, or like, you know, different Pan-African tribal myths form stuff with Wakanda.
The right kind of dragon for his people. His mother studies this fluid type of martial arts. So it would make sense that they have this water dragon and not a rain dragon or
that's
some kind of celestial dragon or They have
there
a
are
torch dragon.
fire dragons.
There's so many types of dragons.
Yeah, there are fire dragons in like East Asian culture, but like water dragons play a very special role. I mean, we talked about Miyazaki, like Spirited Away. They're all over. And when you think of Bruce Lee and Bruce Lee's association with dragons and his association with water, well, there you go. It's like in East Asian culture, those two things go together more than dragons and fire, really. So there's like a very tight connection there with that idea of, like you said, that fluid rigidity and all those different elements and like what it's meant to symbolize and what it kind of instructs about the values of like having a sound body and mind and what it means to be powerful and all these different things. So it's it all really kind of comes together, but it's just, to me, at just a very basic visceral level, is really cool seeing all that stuff. And the way it's pitched into the lore is very interesting because they say it's another dimension, Talo. And this is interesting. And I'm going to break it down a little bit further coming up, but like, it's interesting the terminology of dimension in the MCU and now with all this multiverse stuff, because dimension's a term that we were using a lot in Doctor Strange, and we had those different dimensions and so forth. So this appears similar to that, in the sense that like this is kind of like another layer of the quote universe. It might technically still also be considered a separate universe. They also say that, but it's clearly tied in a sense of timeline to the main MC universe. Or it could be that it's kind of like a nexus thing, which is another term we've learned, where it's like Talo kind of exists outside all these other timelines. So hypothetically different, it's connected to all those Earths, hypothetically. We don't know. We don't get too many specific answers. What they do
all
tell
those
us,
Earths or none of those Earths.
yeah, what they do tell us very quickly, Michelle was explaining, like that this world that they're in is much, much bigger than the part we're seeing here, that their village is really just one small part, that there's whole big cities out here. So that gives us stuff we can see in future Shang-Chi movies and, and that this gate, what's beyond it are these soul-sucking creatures led by the dweller in the darkness. Now, I'm gonna table all of that and what that is for a moment, because there's an interesting tie-in that I want us to get to before we talk about it. But let's just like wrap up the discussion of Shang-Chi specifically by getting to this climax, which, we kind of already talked about the arrows and the big fight at the end, but like with the riding the dragon and all that stuff. And that was cool. And I loved, like, again, once Shang-Chi took control of those 10 rings, the way he killed the thing was like, again, just kind of like, it was very, for me, like, as like, it was like he went like full like crazy anime superpower guy. And I was like, I dig that as a fan of that stuff. Like,
and then there's that great moment when Michelle Yeoh tells Xialing that too long have you sat in the shadows. And it's like, yeah, she's taking control now. She's going to go kick some ass and then take over the whole 10 rings.
That's the end credit scene. But like, I do like,
but during the battle scene when they first get to the town and she's watching everyone,
she says that,
she's watching them train. And then she's like, it's your turn to be a badass too. And then she's really, she saves, what's his name? Sword hand guy, Romanian sword hand guy. Razor Fist.
Yeah. I'm glad he's sticking around. He's a cool character.
I'm glad he is too. I didn't.
Look, the only character they really killed off was Wenwu, which is unfortunate. It kind of continues that tradition of Marvel. When they do have good villains, they end up killing them off, like Killmonger. But I don't know. At the same time, I kind of feel like Tony Leung put it all on the table. He probably is not the type of actors like, yes, sign me up for multiple movies. Like, it's really not his thing. And like you said, Xialing takes over the 10 rings at the end. So it's like they want to go a different route there. But that being said, I think the door is wide open for Tony Stark, Iron Man versus Wenwu, like we've always wanted it in like a what if story or like a future multiversal thing where we see another reality that had that happen. That would be really cool. So if we get that in the future, I am all for it. But I did think when we went out, it was like I said, it's that full Vader arc. It's that he went out protecting his son. And the moment before that where they're fighting and Shang-Chi takes control of the 10 rings, I knew that moment was inevitably coming, but I was like,
yeah,
I I really fucking loved it. And everyone in the theater went nuts when he like walks out of the mist with the rings all circling around his head and stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought that was his like kind of badass hero moment. I'm a superhero now. Not only am I good at like kung fu and like can talk to water dragons, but like
and Tai Chi. He's good at Tai Chi now too.
No, yeah, that's right. That's what he trains with Michelle Yeoh.
Tai Chi.
Yeah. No, but that's really important because that's how he actually takes control of the 10 rings.
That's how he actually takes control, is becoming like water. Yes.
So I thought that was all great. And like I said, it led to like him basically having like, again, like the fact that Shang-Chi now has these powers with the 10 rings and stuff, it like really does make his fighting style feel like, oh shit, this is like some live action, like anime shit like I never thought we'd see. So I was like, I was into that. But yeah, so Shang-Chi, can't give it enough credit. Really loved the movie and how it.
2 thumbs up,
big time. Now that I'm not contagious anymore, I'm definitely gonna go see it again. Maybe I'll see it tonight. Really looking forward to it. But there's still stuff to talk about here because I've been saving it because I want to kind of give us this phase 4. Let's go back through it again because man, I'll give Marvel credit. This was the first movie. I'm sorry, Black Widow. They kind of knew it was. And that was kind of their mulligan. That's what's funny. They called Shang-Chi an experiment. Black Widow, no offense to Scarlett Johansson, was the experiment, unfortunately. And this is the real
COVID
deal.
Times. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, again, going right into those stingers, like, that's like, I felt like phase 1 again in the best possible way. And like, and
you know what? I did too.
Because it was like
phase 1 vibes.
But it also so wasn't phase 1 because we have all this shit to build off of. It was like the best of both worlds. I guess that's what phase 4 kind of is. And it felt like this thing of like, oh, like Bruce Banner literally says to him, like, you're in the circus now. Like, it was like, oh shit. Yeah, here we go. And I'll talk about it in a second. But like what felt most phase 1 to me about it was like, I think the next movie we're getting is Eternals. It wasn't obvious, but now it seems kind of obvious. Oh shit, this is actually directly all setting up stuff we're going to see in Eternals. So it feels like we're going to get the payoff almost immediately. So I'm very, very excited about that. Maybe I'll be wrong, but let me tell you, I don't think I'm wrong. I haven't really been wrong so far. And now that we have another movie with a lot of stuff going on and a couple episodes of What If, I've refined my forecast, and I think it's only more accurate. So let's go through this, okay? We started off unexpectedly with WandaVision. WandaVision gave us Scarlet Witch as Scarlet Witch now, introduced us to her kids, Speed and Wiccan, Billy and Tommy, gave us now 2 visions. So we have Vision, that's the version that Wanda seemingly created from her memory of the real Vision. And then the Vision's body restored, which doesn't really recognize himself as Vision, is White Vision. They have that, the 2 have that weird ship of Theseus debate, which is very interesting, very Vision-like. And we have Agatha. So what I'm doing right now is I'm putting all the pieces for everybody on the board because there's a fuck ton of pieces, dude. There's so many pieces. It's crazy. It can drive me nuts, man.
To keep track of. Yes.
Well, that's what I'm attempting to do. I'm attempting to map it out so we can keep track of it, which is going to be very difficult. And maybe when
will help me make sense of things too.
Yeah. Well, look, we're recording this right now as audio, of course. But when I edit the video version for YouTube, maybe I'll try to give as much visual aid as I can, which means it'll take longer to edit, but it'll be worth it.
It does help.
Kids help. Yeah, it'll help me, man. It'll help me, man. It'll be me making my actual Pepe Silva board instead of like going crazy chain smoking. I feel very Pepe Silva right now, or very Charlie, I should say. It's like, we already been fired. Yeah. Okay.
It all comes back to bird law. If you just remember that, it'll be fine.
Yes. Okay. So like I said, again, I'll repeat it really quick. Scarlet Witch, Speed and Wiccan, 2 Visions, Vision and White Vision, and then Agatha. All those characters are in play. We know where we're next going to see Scarlet Witch. The rest of them, mystery. Okay. Then we got the Falcon and Winter Soldier. So that gave us the new Captain America, the Sam Wilson Captain America. We got Bucky, who I'm now going to call, even though they didn't officially christen him this yet, White Wolf. That's his new name. Fuck it. Winter Soldier is old news. As far as I'm concerned, we'll see if we get the official confirmation of that, but that's what I got out of it. So that's me kind of willing something into existence, but I think I'm going to be right. Okay. Baron Zemo, he's out in the wind. Then we have the U.S. agent, John Walker, I should say. Power broker, Sharon Carter. And then we have Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. We already saw her again in Black Widow. And she was doing what? Recruiting Yelena, who I'm also going to are basically our new Black Widow. But we also still have waiting in the wings somewhere, Red Guardian, presumably. Presumably he's not dead.
No, he's not dead, and I think he needs his own movie.
I definitely want to see more of him, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah, he's another piece on the board. Another piece we probably aren't going to see again, but I'm putting her on here, is Taskmaster. Because while technically she's not under any like control anymore and probably doesn't have an interest in doing any fighting, I presume she still has the copycat abilities. So
yeah, why would she not?
Exactly. So that means she can still kick a fuck ton of ass. So she comes back. There you go. Yes. Wait, what was that sound?
My cat.
Oh my God. I thought that was you making a weird noise.
No, he scratched me with a nail, so I was trying to cut it, and he doesn't like getting his nails cut.
Sorry to hear that. I'm keeping all this in because that was hilarious. Okay.
My cat walking on my lap and nearly killing me, drawing on the blood.
Oh, I'm sorry about the blood. But okay. Now we're on to the big boy, which is still the undisputed king of Phase 4, even though Shang-Chi is amazing. But this just set the bar so high that we're talking top 5 of all MCU is Loki, right? So Loki gave us, of course, our Loki variants, Sylvie, the TVA, and
the little boy Loki with the alligator Loki.
Well, yeah,
I wonder if we're going to see that again.
Kid Loki's in play. Kid Loki's in play. Kid Loki's in play big time because he's supposed to be in Young Avengers. So we'll get to that. Obviously, the biggest piece in play is Kang the motherfucking Conqueror. So
Kang the Conqueror. Yeah. He's Kang. He's conquering you.
Of course, the variation of Kang we see at the end of Loki, He Who Remains. We probably have seen the last of that one.
The last of that version. Now it's all the worst versions.
All the other worst versions.
The meaner versions, I should say.
The meaner versions, yes.
The meaner versions.
So we have that all still, and we're going to get Loki season 2. But my whole point, as we talked about before, is I think we're going to see every single one of these characters outside of Loki season 2 before even Loki season 2. So we'll get to that. Yes. And yeah, like Loki season 2 is definitely not coming till 2023 at the soonest, I would say, or late 2022 at the earliest, but probably 2023. Even Feige was saying that recently. So there you go. Now, What If, which is still ongoing. We still have a few more episodes, but while technically What If wants you to believe that these are all kind of isolated stories that we're not going to see, you have to remember this multiverse is coming back in a big, big fucking way, right? It's like fucking Infinity Stones are dead as disco, but multiverse is coming back in a big, big fucking way. All right, to quote Lance from Pulp Fiction. We have in What If, of course, the Watcher, who in every episode has gotten a little bit more involved. That's very telling, and they cast Jeffrey Wright. So don't be surprised when we see live action Jeffrey Wright Watcher, which will be really creepy.
Yes,
really
but
creepy.
I love Jeffrey Wright
With his giant bald head.
I love it.
It's gonna look gross. But
I hope he wears glasses and has
Watchers just have white eyes. And technically, I should say, technically, we already have seen live action Watchers because if you recall, in Guardians 2, my favorite, in Guardians 2, the Stan Lee cameo involves Stan Lee as the astronaut talking to Watchers. You remember that?
I'm trying to think if I do.
Well, you need to rewatch Guardians 2. And I know you want to rewatch Guardians 2 and admit it's better than Guardians 1. I know you do.
I don't know about that. I don't know
Guardians
about that.
Guardians 2 supremacy. I'm telling you, man. Guardians 2 is the key.
Guardians 1 forever.
Oh my God. No way. You know who's not in Guardians 1? Mantis. And Mantis fucking rules.
That's fair. But Guardians 1 gave us a whole new genre of superhero movies. Gave us the fun genre that we have now today in all superhero movies. It is supreme.
Oh, I can't wait. We're still teasing it, but I can't wait till we have the great Guardians of the Galaxy 1 versus 2 debate. Properly.
We will.
Yeah.
We'll
okay. So again, we got the Watcher. We have Captain Carter. I would not be surprised if we see Captain Carter in a Secret Wars or even way sooner than we get something like that. Because Haley Atwell still has a pulse.
She's going to be in something for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So fucking, why wouldn't we get that? We're going to, again, talk a little bit more about it in a second. But, well, actually, no, really right now. Doctor Strange variants. Now, let's finally get in this because I've been dying to talk about this. So you've seen the No Way Home trailer, right?
Yes.
Okay. People have pointed this out. And of course they go to things like dun 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 Mephisto. And actually for good reason in this case, because based on the trailer, elements of the Spider-Man movie relate to a Spider-Man storyline from the comics called One More Day that did involve Mephisto. So makes sense. But putting Mephisto aside, because there's a real question as to whether we'll ever get, quote, Mephisto proper in the MCU, because it is like weird to put like a character as basically the devil.
The devil.
Yeah.
He might be like a
Disney's
demon.
Gonna be
he's like a demon. He's like a demon guy. So maybe if they play up that he's like a demon and not the devil.
Agreed.
Maybe.
Agreed. They could do it that way for sure. I don't put it past them, but they might.
He looks like the devil, but I know, he's got like hair and he's actually technically Doctor Strange for another universe, right?
Okay. Well,
am I thinking of the right Mephisto?
I've never heard that, but that's what I was actually going to get to. So you just either read my mind or you've heard someone else theorize about this. So,
well, that's kind of the vibes that I got especially after watching the What If last night.
This is what I'm talking about. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was going to say was you already more or less hit the nails right on the heads. Doctor Strange, the 4th episode of What If, introduces us to 2 different Doctor Strange variants. We have the actually existing in the same timeline, technically, thanks to what the Ancient One does to like split them. But we have one Doctor Strange who, again, he more or less is the same as the Doctor Strange we know, except that his origin story involved Christine dying instead of his hands being destroyed.
His hands, yeah.
But the other one is, again, had that same origin, but went down the path of seeking power at the expense of like his soul and humanity. So he like gets really into dark magic. By the way, just really cool stuff we see in that episode from Strange Comics that I hope we get to see in live action. Cagliostro, which I always think of the Miyazaki film now when that's sad. So it's weird, but they don't technically have anything to do with each other. And I forget the name of the character, but he appears. It's like one of the first times What If is introduced a totally new character that wasn't in any of the movies. You know what I'm talking about? The guy who works at Cagliostro, the black guy.
No.
You remember? He's in the episode. He's the guy
in this episode. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I hope he shows up in a movie. I forget the guy who did his voice, but he could play him in live action, presumably. Mm-hmm. But that was really cool. But that Strange, right, through his experiments becomes very demonic-like, obviously.
Yeah.
And this makes me think, and especially the way the episode ends and the way he confronts the Watcher and the way technically he's still alive at the end of it, even though his whole universe is destroyed.
Right.
Well, what if we see that Strange again? And even if it's not that Strange, right? Just the concept of Doctor Strange variants and Doctor Strange variants that could be evil.
Yes.
Now you go back in the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. Now people have been pointing out, and I pointed out, just like even for anyone else saying, just the first time I watched the trailer, I was like, Doctor Strange is acting very out of character. Now, it could just be trailer editing to make plot points that are much more complicated seem simplified. But it seems like this Doctor Strange is basically like behaving out of character. By that, I mean like taking risks that he normally wouldn't take. and playing loose with the rules in ways that he tends not to, from what we've seen of him. Like Doctor Strange is a pompous asshole, but he's a pompous asshole in favor of a certain type of like, everybody better like, you know, follow the rules here because I made the rules almost is really his thinking. But I don't think he bends even his own rules for the sake of a guy like Peter Parker. So it's very strange that he seemingly cooperates with this haphazard wish of Peter's, right? Not if he's an evil Doctor Strange trying to fuck up the multiverse. Like, so again, when people say, oh, what if that's Mephisto in disguise? I'm like, well, what if Doctor Strange, an evil Doctor Strange, effectively just is Mephisto for the MCU?
Right.
Like, and this then, again, because remember I said this last time, everything that everyone predicted it could still happen. It just hasn't happened yet. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness involves Scarlet Witch, Mephisto, Strange, Evil Strange, Mephisto. You see where I'm going with this? So another thing that is in What If, and it's in both the Captain Carter episode and the Doctor Strange episode, you'll notice, is that tentacle monster.
Yes.
Now, that tentacle monster, a lot of people believe, is Shuma-Gorath. And Shuma-Gorath is a big deal in the Marvel comics and specifically Doctor Strange lore. I'm not very familiar with it, so this is just stuff I looked up. But
is it like their version? Is it like it's the underwater version of the giant star? It's got like an eye.
It's kind of, oh yes, it has a giant eye.
Like an eye in the middle and a bunch of tentacles. Am I thinking of the right?
You're thinking of the right thing. You're thinking of the right thing. Now, Shuma-Gorath, if just based off its design and its purpose, its connections, this is something I want to really point out here, because when you think about it from this lens, all of a sudden more things seem connected. Shuma-Gorath is very much like drawing from Lovecraftian kind of ideas. So let's think about that for a second. Lovecraftian ideas like meaning like Cthulhu mythos, which is about beings from another dimension, right? Who come to wreak cosmic horror on our universe. Now, if you're trying to build up the next wave of ultra powerful villains and threats, and specifically ones that Doctor Strange would be intimately involved with, seems like the right direction, right? Now, so let's look at where else. Not only have we seen Shuma-Gorath in 2 episodes, potentially of What If, including one with Strange, but there's already been some rumors that Shuma-Gorath might be in Multiverse of Madness. Okay. And then on top of that, let's talk about Shang-Chi, right? So Shang-Chi fights the Dweller in the Darkness, another Cthulhu-like being from Marvel Comics. Okay? So what I'm saying is, and this comes from a gate from another dimension. They literally say that. So what I'm getting at is they seem to be setting up a whole host of extra dimensional monsters, loosely like Lovecraftian inspired, that our heroes are fighting. Now, the other thing that Shang-Chi sets up that's teased in the stingers, it's funny that it was the title of this movie. I remember thinking about 2/3 into the movie, like, movie's called Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And I feel like we've learned jack shit about the Ten Rings. And the movie ends and we still learn jack shit about the Ten Rings, other than Shang-Chi now has control of them. Well,
yeah, we just know that they're older than time.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So we get to that post-credit scene. All of a sudden we got not only Wong there, but we got Bruce Banner and Captain Marvel. And they're like, yo, we don't know what these are, but they seem to be sending out a signal, and they seem to be very ancient technology of some kind. Now, remember, the next movie is what? Eternals. Eternals is all about ancient beings created or endowed with power by the Celestials, like aka the supreme gods of the Marvel universe, right? Who are meant to fight these things called deviants. Now, we don't know much about deviants. I mean, we know what they are in Marvel Comics, but where I'm going with this is, what if in the MCU, deviants are also, quote, extra dimensional beings? What if deviants are tied to things like Shumagorath and Dweller in Darkness? Not saying that those things specifically are deviants, but what if they're all meant to be tied to this sort of elseworld, like evil universe, alternate universe thing that's trying to invade our universe, right?
Ooh, yeah.
And the Eternals, basically, they've been dormant. Like, now fight that part, I don't really have too much to say about it. We'll have to watch the movie. I mean, they kind of hit in the trailer, the Celestials forbade them from using their powers to intervene in things,
unless it was to stop these interdimensional monsters. Yeah.
Right. So Eternals have all this crazy powers and technology from the Celestials. The 10 rings, therefore, could be also from the Celestials. We might see them in Eternals, is what I'm getting at. And the Eternals will also explain that, like, again, the stuff we're seeing in Shang-Chi at the end and the stuff that we're being hinted at in What If is all connected to this, like, evil dimensions trying to invade our universe, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead just yet, but what if that is all at the behest of Mr. Kang the Conqueror? What if he's trying to, like, seize control of these beings in order to, again,
use them as his weapons?
Well, almost maybe potentially even overthrow the Celestials. Which would make him essentially like the supreme god. Now, in Marvel Comics, there's like gods beyond that, like the Beyonder and the Living Tribunal, and maybe we're getting to that. I don't know. Let's not worry about that just yet. But my point is, there's seemingly maybe a direct line between what we're seeing in What If to Shang-Chi to Eternals, which means this story is a lot tighter than it seemed at first, which is very interesting. We'll know when we get to Eternals in November. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Eternals stinger includes, like, literally them continuing on from the stinger we saw at the end of Shang-Chi, where you see fucking Shang-Chi interacting with some of these characters and being like, yo, what are these 10 rings? Like, because another thing you get in the Eternals trailer is, like, they talk about this thing called the emergence, which we don't know what that is, but they said it's something that can only happen now after the blip. Right. So what if that is, like, because of the power of the Infinity Stones and the blip, like, disrupting the fabric of reality to a point where it's allowed the penetration of these other dimensions to increase, right? It's kind of like a shift in the balance of power. And then you tie that in with what happened in Loki and what's presumably going to happen in Spider-Man. And you see where I'm going with this. Like, those walls that separate these universes are going to start to really come apart. Which puts us in a very interesting place. So obviously, like I said, flag pieces on the board for Shang-Chi. We have Shang-Chi himself. We have the 10 rings, the object. We have Zhai Ling's 10 rings organization. We have Wong. We have the Dweller in the Darkness, even though technically they're defeated, just whatever other extra dimensional beings might be related. They're all still part of it. Then we have Captain Marvel, who has long hair again. We roughly know where she's going to appear again. Bruce Banner, who's back to being a human, or just normal, not like Smart Hulk. And notice how he was wearing that sling. I don't know if that's a different injury that we haven't seen yet or don't know about yet. Or I think what that's more likely a reference to is when he used the gauntlet, the way it damaged his arm. He might be, like, permanently slinged up, which would suck.
Oh, yeah. That would suck so bad.
Yeah, but apparently that would seem to be the case. So, yeah, and like I said, the 10 rings, the objects, which might tie into Eternals and Celestials and this emergence thing, which leads us right into the Eternals. And we talked about the Deviants already and that connection. Another thing we're going to get in Eternals is Kit Harington's character, Black Knight. I feel like that's a character that's going to appear going forward. So that's another piece on the board. And like I said, I think we might get Shang-Chi and Katie appearing in either a stinger or some other cameo in Eternals. We'll see. On November, we'll see if my bet's right, because I think that could happen. I think it would make sense based off of the speculation.
Yeah.
Next thing we're getting after Eternals on Disney Plus is the Hawkeye series, which is supposed to feature the return of Yelena, as we saw at the end of Black Widow, that post-credit scene. It's like she's coming after Hawkeye. We're obviously going to get Hawkeye. We're going to get Kate Bishop Hawkeye. And what I expect to happen in this Hawkeye series is more setup of this team that Valentina seems to be putting together, which, again, without knowing exactly how it's going to shape up, I'm going to say is the Thunderbolts, which is like a team of anti-heroes, which is why I think Hawkeye might also feature the return of Xia Ling and her new 10 rings. I would not be surprised, because that would make a lot of sense. Like,
that actually would make sense.
Yeah, like just not only just the anti-hero angle, but just like who could, Kate Bishop and Hawkeye be fighting a lot of. Like 10 rings guys makes a lot of sense. That just like in terms of power scaling, I mean. So that would make a lot of sense. And of course, because you have Kate Bishop, Hawkeye is furthering along this Young Avengers setup that we've seen to be getting, right? Then after that, some point, presumably at the end of this year, unless it gets pushed into next year, but it's already been shot, we get Miss Marvel, the Disney Plus series. So probably in December is my guess. And that's going to presumably feature the return of Sword, who is obviously set up in WandaVision and the end of Spider-Man Far From Home. And then we also, along with that, get more Skrulls, presumably. We're presumably going to directly be setting up the Marvel's film, the next Captain Marvel movie, and the Secret Invasion Disney Plus series. So, again, I speculated on this before, but what if this Skrull Sword stuff that's happening also revolves around this Eternals emergence thing that we're going to be learning about in that movie? Like, this could be like the big cosmic event that's causing all the problems, right?
Right.
So we could be getting ties into that, and could be furthering along this idea of like, there's a multiverse out there and it's starting to come apart or whatever, or converge, or however they end up making it make sense. That then brings us directly into the first clear big multiverse adventure film, which is Spider-Man No Way Home in December 17th. Again, I won't try to break down too much more about the trailer, but I'll just say, based on that, seems like we're setting up a multiversal Sinister Six of villains. So we know we got Doc Ock and Green Goblin from the Maguire films. We have Electro, Jamie Foxx from the Garfield film that he's confirmed. The rest of these aren't confirmed. These are other possibilities, but like based off stuff we've seen in the trailer, I think it could be any number of these things. I'll give you a sense of what I think is most likely. A lot of people pointed out that they think they see Lizard, which would make sense because that's the other Garfield villain from the first.
Yes, I thought. Well, there was definitely somebody that looked like him. Yeah.
It's blurry in shadows. It's trailer bullshit, but it would make sense if Lizard came back. So yeah, Lizard could be that would put us at 4. Other people point out you see some sand. So what if we get Sandman coming back from Tobey Spider-Man 3? Interesting, but that would tip the balance of villains a bit in the Tobey verse direction, which maybe that's the point, because those are the most popular. Then we could see, to add some Tom Holland stuff, you could see the return of Vulture. We already know he's going to be in the weird Sony Morbius movie. I don't even want to talk about that. And speaking of Vulture, there was the setup at the end of not far from Homecoming, the first Tom Holland Spider-Man film, that involved Michael Mando's character, who seemed to be Scorpion or going to become Scorpion. So maybe we'll get Scorpion, though. I don't know. I haven't heard he's in the movie, and I don't really see them really. I feel like that's going to be a drop plot line, honestly. So my guess for the Sinister Six, well, who I think is going to be it, I think they're hiding this person, but like, this is what I want. I don't think Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal, is dead. And given that he's the one directly responsible for everything we're seeing in this movie, I would like it. He comes back and he's part of the Sinister Six. So from the Holland side, you get Mysterio. And I would say, meaning you don't even really need Keaton Vulture. No offense to the guy. But I would say what I'd also like to see, though, there's no direct evidence we're getting it. I would kind of like to see the Wilson Fisk Kingpin, as played by Vincent D'Onofrio from the Daredevil series, come into it and be part of the Sinister Six. That would make my fucking day, which, like I said, there's no direct evidence that he's involved in this movie at all. But there's a lot of speculation and some rumor reporting that, I don't know, could be bogus, but I think it would be true. And it would certainly make sense with the plot of this movie as we know it, that Matt Murdock, Daredevil's in the movie. The Charlie Cox version. So I'm really hoping that ends up being true.
TV movie version, or the TV show version.
People have actually made very funny memes where they're like showing that Charlie Cox is like, it's like Daredevil's coming in and then they show Ben Affleck. It's like, you didn't expect that. But it's the multiverse. There's no rules anymore. You can have no rules. You can have any of them. You can have any of them that you want.
Murdoch could be anybody. It could be me.
It could be you. There's also the possibility that the movie will give us Miles Morales. My guess is if that happens, it'll be like a post-credit thing. We're not going to get too much of him. And I think that's probably for the best, because if we're going to do Miles, he deserves to be an important fixture. And this movie already seems like the most bloated movie ever, which is a little nerve-wracking, but I trust Marvel Studios, so hopefully we're good. And the trailer does look awesome. I also think, given, again, the fact that this movie is the direct lead into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, directed by Sam Raimi, that we're going to get, like I said, evil Strange. Like, that Strange you're seeing is the evil Strange, either from that episode of What If or just some other evil Strange who's effectively maybe like the answer to Mephisto, who might be trying to summoning Shumagorath or in league with it. Because remember, like, that Strange seeming to eat a part of him to like merge with him. We could also get in the Spider-Man movie an appearance by Scarlet Witch to help set up Multiverse of Madness, or Agatha, or maybe the Watcher, Agatha, or maybe even Kang. I'd say all those pieces are on the board as possibilities here, which is crazy and really exciting. Ditto, moving on to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, we're definitely getting Scarlet Witch. We're definitely getting Mordo, Chiwetel Ejiofor characters return. We're also, I did not know this. I only found this out recently. I don't know if you've heard about this. Confirmed, like, been cast, definitely in the movie. Miss America, the character America Chavez from like very recent Marvel.
Oh,
you know about this character?
You're kidding. Yes, she's a Latina teen.
Yeah.
You're kidding.
Nope.
No,
she's been casted.
Know that.
She's in the movie. Yeah.
Well, I knew that they were casting because I had tried to get in for it, but I'm too old. So
fuck them.
She's a teen.
I know.
She's supposed to be a teenager.
You look
I'm
young.
34.
You look young. I know, but you can play younger. Remember when they used to cast 40-year-olds as like high schoolers on the OC?
Yeah, I can go like 10 years younger, but not 20. They wanted her to be because
the actress they casted is really young.
I think she's legit like 17 or 18.
Yeah.
But when I first saw that they were casting, I sent a message to my agent. I was like, what are the odds they go older for this?
Maybe you could be your big sister or something. I have zero familiarity with the character in the comics. So I don't know if she has like family or what, or sidekicks. I have no idea. But
she does, but I can't remember something bad happened to them.
Well, she's in it. We're gonna get an MCU version like that. Boom.
Yeah,
crazy.
Awesome.
Presumably,
America
I don't know.
Chavez in the flesh.
I don't know if the character has any ties to Young Avengers in the comics, but I'm gonna assume that's a lock for Young Avengers, the MCU version, when we get it. So there you go, another Young Avenger. Every fucking project, more Young Avengers. That's all I'm gonna say. So they got to set it up.
They are setting it up.
They're setting it up. Yes. And that's what I'm saying. It's almost like too much setup. Anyway, I also think, given Scarlet Witch is in the movie, we got to get Vision. You don't do Scarlet Witch with no Vision. So Vision's probably in the movie. That's given some version of Vision. I don't know if it's White Vision or the other Vision or another Vision. Agatha, again, seems likely. No official rumors or anything related, but I'm like, hey, I think that they set up that character pretty well. And again, it's Scarlet Witch, so why wouldn't we get Agatha? Spider-Man, again, directed by Sam Raimi. maybe we don't get Holland Spider-Man. Maybe we can get like Maguire Spider-Man in this movie. I would not be surprised.
So ridiculous, and
I would love it.
I would be weirdly okay with it. Why would I be?
All I know, I've been throwing it out there, as of many, because one of my favorite Reddits is the Raimi memes Reddit, which is all dedicated to memes about Spider-Man Sam Raimi movies. That they've been saying since day one, Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness is actually Spider-Man 4. This is how Sam Raimi's making it happen. So all I know is the fandom wants that to be so true, and if we get it, I would fucking lose my shit the same way they would. So I'm on board. I hope we get it. Like I said, other strange variants: Mephisto, Shumagorath, Kang. I also think whether we get Kang or not, it also could be our place to get more Sylvie or more Mobius.
Yes,
or more TVA.
More Sylvie.
More the Watcher. These are all things like, and honestly, you'll see me keep saying those names because I'm like, these characters are confirmed multiverse hoppers, so they could appear anywhere. And why? So expect them somewhere. Speaking of which, after that, we get Thor, Love, and Thunder, which I already know is all the Guardians plus Valkyrie plus Jane Foster Thor. That's kind of the basic premise. The villain is Gore the God Butcher, played by Christian Bale. All very, very exciting. But I'm like, hey, it's Thor, meaning connected to Loki, meaning what if we get more Loki or more Loki variants? What if we get Sylvie? What if we get Kang, Gamora, all these? Well, the Gamora question is just continuing off from, Endgame and whatever happened to that fucking Gamora. It seems like the Guardians would be looking for her, right? So yeah, that's just an obvious thing. Then we have She-Hulk on Disney Plus, which all I can say is, given what we saw in Shang-Chi with Bruce Banner back to human with his sling on, looking very tired and unhealthy, I'm kind of like, oh shit, man. Dude definitely looks like he needs a lawyer. Makes sense. And of course, Abomination, which brings me back to the whole thing in Shang-Chi. Like, what the fuck? Where the fuck did Abomination? Where's he been at? Why is he fighting there? I have no idea. The boldness of them teasing that definitely has me excited. And I think She-Hulk, well, we know Abominations and She-Hulk. So that's not coming till next year, but that's presumably where we're going to get some answers about that. Okay. Then we have Moon Knight, which we know basically nothing about, and I don't have anything to say about it. But Black Panther. Moon Knight's the one with Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke's going to be in it, so that's going to be
right.
dope cast, dope filmmaker. They got I think a Persian American guy to direct it, so that's cool. But yeah, I don't know anything about Moon Knight from the comics, and I don't know what the story is. I have no idea how it could tie in, so I'm just kind of just mentioning it and moving on. Black Panther Wakanda Forever, though. There's some rumors Namor the Submariner might be like the villain in it, which would be really cool. It makes sense, like Wakanda versus Atlantis kind of thing.
Yeah.
But theory, maybe we get some Shang-Chi in this movie. Maybe we get Shang-Chi going to Wakanda. We get that union, which I think would be really fucking cool and would be a huge box office success if they had Shang-Chi and I don't know who's going to take over as Black Panther for Chadwick. Maybe I don't mean like they're not recasting the character. I'm saying like who's going to like inherit the powers. I have to assume it's going to be Shuri. That just like makes the most sense. But who knows? Ryan Coogler, I trust him to kind of like almost surprise us maybe. But yeah, so it could be like Shuri with Shang-Chi, and where there's Shang-Chi, there's presumably Katie. So maybe we get a little Awkwafina in the film too. That would be cool. We don't know. Or maybe we get some Eternals or Celestial stuff, more multiverse stuff. Actually, speaking of the What If episode, I would think it'd be really cool if we got some like the Ravagers from the universe where T'Challa joined them, if they somehow like, I don't know, crossed into another universe and ended up in Wakanda. Like we got like fucking Yondu, like in the movie. Like I think that would be, I don't know how they could make it, but like, hey man, Kang, like what if Kang's in the movie? Who the fuck knows? Kang could be everywhere and everywhere. That's why I keep bringing it up. Speaking of which, we're definitely going to get more crazy shit is Secret Invasion. We got Nick Fury, Talos. I'm assuming Monica Rambeau appears in this as well, because I'm assuming we're going to get Secret Invasion right before we get the Marvels film, which is in November of 2022, right? So we get more Nick Fury, Talos, Monica Rambeau, given the way WandaVision ended. More stuff with Sword, which, like I said, I think is going to tie in with Eternals, maybe tie in with stuff going on with Black Knight. So I think that all makes sense, and that will directly lead us into the Marvels, which is the official team up of Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, aka Spectrum, depending on the continuity, and then Kamala Khan as in Miss Marvel. Maybe Mistress America or Miss America. It's not the Greta Gerwig movie. Maybe Miss America also shows up in this movie. I have no idea. It'd be kind of cool to get all those superpowered female heroes in one movie. I mean, they already got 3. Be really cool. Why not add the 4th? I don't know. Yeah, presumably more stuff with Sword, Nick Fury, and other things. And again, if you have Kamala Khan and Miss America, then I really think you're setting up some Young Avengers stuff in this.
For sure.
But the next movie after that, and let me tell you, last night's What If had me a little bit more, even more excited for this movie. And I don't want to spoil that What If, so I won't say why. But Ant-Man Quantumania, which is our 3rd confirmed super multiverse movie, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the movie where we know 100% we're getting more
Kang the Conqueror.
Yeah, so even if we don't see him between now and then, which I highly doubt, I'm pretty sure we're going to see him between now and then. February 2023, we're getting more fucking Kang the Conqueror, and presumably he's the main villain in this movie. We're also getting grown-up Cassie Lang, which is another Young Avenger character, or I should say teenage Cassie Lang, which is another Young Avenger character. If we're getting all that and multiverse stuff, Doctor Strange, he in the mix? Maybe Shang-Chi's in this. I'm just keep throwing out Shang-Chi because, again, I think Shang-Chi 2 is a few years off, and I think they're going to want to put Shang-Chi in some shit between now and then. So
yeah, you have to. Why would you not?
You have to. So I'll keep throwing them out there. Mobius would make sense. I've said it. The winning pairing that we have not gotten yet, but has to happen, is fucking Owen Wilson and Paul Rudd together. So it makes all too much sense to me, especially when we're dealing with Kang and multiverse, to include Mobius and have him in scenes with Paul Rudd. And like Paul Rudd, I'll just say, is in the newest What If episode, and like he's giving me some zingers, and I'm like, I gotta see him with Mobius. I gotta see Rudd and Wilson. Like, you have to give me that. So there you go. Which then brings us presumably to Loki season 2, which I assume is going to come in 2023, probably after Quantumania. And then we'll definitely get more Loki, more Sylvie, more Mobius, more Kang, probably the Watcher, maybe the Ant-Man, like Ant-Man's in they come into Quantumania, then he comes into Loki season 2. That would be dope. Then we have Guardians 3, which maybe it'll have more Thor. Again, multiverse potential, like maybe those Ravengers from the What If story show up there. Maybe we get more Kang or the Watcher. Eternals seems like an obvious thing to include with Guardians crossover. Obviously, Guardians was the first Guardians film was the film that first introduced us in the MCU to the concept of the Celestials. So there you go. After that, I don't really have much to say, but I'll just list off the titles that we know are coming, confirmed. Ironheart, that's the Riri Williams new Iron Man thing. Armor Wars, kind of related, the War Machine Don Cheadle project. Then there's the new Blade movie with Mahershala Ali as Blade.
Yes!
That's going to be cool.
So
very
excited.
Curious to see what they do with that.
Ali.
Very
excited for this. Yeah.
Then there's actually one more confirmed movie. But then we have Fantastic Four. I don't know if Fantastic Four will become before or after this, but we now know, since Falcon and Winter Soldier came out, that they are making Captain America 4 with Sam Wilson, Captain America. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard, recently there was talk about how the Russo brothers were going to come back to the MCU, and then they heard about the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit and were like, we don't know if we want to work with Marvel right now when that's been going on, which is interesting. But my guess is they were in talks to direct this Captain America movie. That would be my guess. That would make the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, they could be in talks to direct whatever the next big crossover movie is, but I'm guessing, given timeline, it'd be more likely to get Captain America 4. I presume that's either coming before or after any of these other things. Presumably after, since there's less work that's been done on it so far. But yeah, that's it for confirmed projects. But there's a couple more unconfirmed things that I think we are going to hear about announcements for pretty soon, which is there's going to be a Wakanda Disney Plus series that will presumably follow up from the Black Panther sequel. Shang-Chi 2. I mean, given the success this past week, Shang-Chi 2 is inevitable. I would not be surprised if they try to cram it into either the end of phase 4 or early phase 5, whatever that breakdown ends up being. And then, of course, as I've been fucking saying, Thunderbolts, they're setting it up. So I assume we got to get it. Probably a Disney Plus series. Young Avengers. Again, they've been setting it up so much that I assume we have to see it. Probably a Disney Plus series. And then lastly, whatever the big next Avengers crossover film is, which I thinking is going to be called New Avengers, that'll either be the start of phase 5 or the end of phase 4. I don't know, but that's got to inevitably be coming around the bend somewhere. And I still think that's still just the first installment before we get to Secret Wars. So like I said, we're talking about how many times we're going to see Kang between now and the next 2-3 years. I think we're going to be talking Kang for the next 8 years is really what I'm getting at, which is crazy because I'll be fucking 40 by the time we get out of this.
We're still talking about Kang.
I don't want to think about that. So that's it. That's what I got for you, Dana. I can't say anything after that scary thought. And you know what's funny? I remember almost 10 years ago now thinking oh my God, by the time those Infinity War movies come out, I'll be almost 30.
Yep.
Yeah. Cruised right by that. Oh my God. Somebody kill me, please. Seriously.
That's a lot. It's a lot to soak in.
I'm out of it.
We might need a map.
We might need a map. So I'll be working on that. That's all I got for you. The MCU can drive a man insane, can drive a man to madness, the multiverse of madness. But I'm glad we got Shang-Chi. I'm glad it was such a success. I really loved it as I've pontificated several times over. But yeah, hopefully we get Shang-Chi 2 before you know it.
Yes, can't wait. It's going to be dope.
Get some women, take them to the Peachtree Dams. I say get liquored up and take them to the Peachtree Dams.
Do you know what I mean? You know why? It's a scary thing to give to a guy like me. Do you know what I mean?
I say get liquored up and take them to the Peachtree Dams.
Do you know what I mean?
I say get liquored up and take them to the Peachtree Dams. Get liquored up and take him to the Peachtree Dams.
Do you know what I mean? You know why? Final cut. It's a scary thing to give to a guy like me.